friends. Welcome back to another episode of the unofficial companion podcast to HBO Max's hit show, Industry. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are the Wall Street Skinny, two lifelong friends, former investment bankers, and teachers who are here to break down everything in your favorite show, from the finance to the romance, and to give you the skinny on what's real and what's Hollywood. I was saying to Kristen, this is like my Super Bowl. This is season 2, episode 8. It is the season finale. I haven't been able to sleep. I'm just so incredibly excited. This was such a good episode. There was so much in this. Mm-hmm. I think that this is the culmination of everything we've done to date. I am so excited for season 3. But before we get there, let's talk about this episode. So this is the finale. It is called Jerusalem. There's a lot to unpack there. We'll save it for when we kind of get there in the episode because it's not immediately evident when it starts out what it means.
Even having watched it, I'm not entirely sure what it has to do with. So I'm excited for you to explain to me what that is.
She's got theories. Okay. I don't know, but I've got some theories.
Awesome. So let's kick off what happened in the episode. So the team of 4, because they've added in DVD to their little group. So they walk into a meeting with Namora, aka Shogun, and they're all kind of nervous, right? They're sitting down and DVD starts talking about how you spent all this money to train your team and the Yankees just poached them away, right? This is an age-old story. Mm-hmm.
Before the meeting started, they are coming straight from the bar. DVD exited the bar and went and called his friends at Namora to see if they'd take a meeting.
Oh, that's a good point.
Eric is very clearly still drunk. He says arigato to the person who opens the door and then goes, that's Japanese for thanks, right? And they're like, oh, wait, is that okay? What are we doing here? So when they're all prepping for the meeting, they're just talking before the Nomura team gets in there. DVD is now kind of running the show. He thinks he's the leader because he's the one who nabbed this meeting. And he's in the background with this super American classic quote of life's a game of inches. Do you know where that comes from, Kristen?
I actually don't know.
That's from Any Given Sunday. It's an American football reference. And it's so consistent with his character. That's how he's been framed all season, right? He's always making references to sports, but they're always American sports when everything else is so British coded.
Yeah.
And he reminds everyone, by the way, no fuck ups, please. But he doesn't know that Eric was the one who torpedoed them at Deutsche Bank earlier. He doesn't know exactly how that went down, but he sees Eric clearly still drunk, being an idiot around the people who letting him into this meeting. That's why he's leading the pitch here.
Right. Well, he also was I lead this team in a series of demands in the prior episode. So person across from them in Namora says they've literally just handed in their passes. And then the next person next to her is but just because we have a hole in our roster doesn't mean that we're desperate. We hear nothing of dysfunction at Pierpoint, a whole enterprise treated like a blood sport. And then Eric here is now, to your point, drunk. So he's not on his A game in the beginning. He says it's hard to plumb to new depths when you're already at rock bottom. The industry,
what? Are you saying that to them? You're saying they're at rock bottom and now they are new depths?
Yeah. Well, then it's he's trying to sort of correct himself. So he goes, the industry, what I mean is you misheard, right? So he says the scale of opportunity like ours is large. We can mint your reputation, make you synonymous with the old players. You take it personally that you've just been gutted. We'll take it personally for you and murder your old team on the tape. Harper pipes in saying, we're half the team, but double the sales credits of the team that just walked out the door. And Rishi adds, and I'm all the flow. I don't even know the name of your old trader, but I'm certain he knows mine.
I love that line.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Such good trader bravado. It's freaking awesome.
And then DVD basically sort of
he's piping in. He's we're no
silos.
I'm still the leader, right?
Yeah. So he says, no silos. We're more than the sum of our parts. And Eric just sort of smiling at DVD, which is so funny given their back history and DVD stabbing him and Eric being the person who, if you remember, because this was obviously not months ago that we've talked about this, but Eric was the one who said DVD was his mentee and he cut his tie when he did his first trade. But anyway, Eric is there, smiles at DVD and says, these kid, they're the future. They're your future. I'm just a bonus feature. Mm-hmm. And so the woman across says, and they have Jesse Bloom, of course. The other woman says, if it does go ahead, we'll look to bake a very healthy relocation package into your terms. They said that they wanted to rebuild closer to home. And Eric goes, Tokyo? To which they say, New York. And DVD and Rishi are not upset at that prospect. So DVD's obviously from New York. Rishi says, I could be one of those Murray Hill wankers. Harper and Eric both do not look thrilled at that idea. Eric has his family, right? He has his kids in school. Uprooting your whole life is a little bit different. And again, why Harper is so reluctant to go back to New York, to me, it doesn't make complete sense, but whatever.
It was one of the weakest plot points in the whole show that they set up very firmly in the first season and then reinforced with the drama with her brother in Berlin that never rang true to me. But we know it's part of like the rules of engagement with Harper is like going back to America, it's off the table. And when Eric did go to New York, which we'll revisit a little later when he talks about it, it was a disaster. So like nothing good lives in New York for Eric either.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. You mean it's almost like a temptation because that other woman is there.
There's the other woman and like who he was in that New York episode. There was nothing good about it. There was no, I'm Eric Tao. He wasn't this well-respected scion of industry. He was a nobody. So we'll talk about it later. He reflects on it. But for them, we can already see like, hang on, this isn't the perfect escape route that we thought it was going to be.
Right. So now in the next scene, they're back at the bar again. And DVD says, Pierpoint's going to be sending us home anyway, because they know that London is going to be folded into New York. And so the team would theoretically be sent back to New York anyway. So he says, at least we're going on our terms now. And Rishi jokes about the fact that he's getting married, so he's not going to be able to like hit on New York women. DVD then goes over to Eric and he starts to bring up what happened with Nicole and Benicia. And so says that he wants some advice. And Harper's sitting there listening to that and is just sort of like taking a drink. But now she obviously knows that there was another incident with Nicole and some other young woman. And so as the night goes on, they all just keep getting drunker and drunker. Yeah. And Eric and Harper are chatting. Eric, again, is super drunk. But he says, do you feel like everything we do is a confidence game? I wonder sometimes, are we the marks? What did I build? What do I believe? And do I believe in any of it? And if I don't, where does that leave you? Now, at the time, as they're like having this semi-deep conversation, the closed caption in the background is like, I mean, it's purely there for comic relief.
No, the off-camera dialogue is always the most important and best part of this show. Like, I'm not that this is the most important conversation.
But it's like, they basically are always like, let's just go crazy with the random shit we put in. So anyway, so the closed caption in the background, Rishi and DVD are talking. And DVD is telling Rishi, because by the way, this is sort of the eve of his wedding. And he says, I almost got married once, except he found out that his fiance was in a three-way with these guys who were supposed to be his brothers.
His fraternity brothers.
And so Rishi then talks about how we walked in on his parrot. Like, again, the whole thing. Anyway, so.
I do think that there are some themes here, some seeds that they are planting for later in terms of, just the theme, right? It's planting this seed in your head of DVD getting fucked over by the people he thought were his brethren.
Oh, and that's so interesting that it was three. That's so interesting that they chose three. Although, in fairness, it wasn't Rishi that totally
I don't know that it was necessarily, I didn't actually write down the text of what they said. I thought it was just that, like,
you're right.
Threesome was something. I don't know.
Well, they said three-way, so that's why I thought three. But actually, a three-way means that there's one, so it's really two. Anyway,
But also, like, this idea of walking in on your parents, such a terrible thing. But
it does come back kind of to,
is a big question throughout this episode. And what Rishi does, or what he said he did in kind of building this lore about himself, is that he shook his father's hand and said, go easy on her, right? That he's in on the joke when there's this thing that should be traumatic. Like, again, there's never a word out of place in this show. I would just squirrel that away in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And then when Eric says this thing to Harper and they're having this heart to heart, he's talking about legacy, right? What did I build? What am I leaving behind? And do I believe in any of it now? That is the other theme of this episode. It's legacy. It's what are you building? And what are you building it on top of? Are you building the shining city of Jerusalem on a hill? We'll get there. Or are you building the dark satanic mills, the toxicity that was just part of the institution before?
Oh,
so we'll get there, I promise.
Yeah. Actually, that just made something else that they all say later make more sense. So Harper says, New York is dead. I'm not going back. Eric talks about how he doesn't want to relocate his family. And so Harper asks, like, what's the move? And Eric says, I'm out of moves, harpsichord. For a second, I thought we were in trouble.
No. He realizes, he says, I'm out of moves. And there's kind of this pause. And he looks at her and he says, for a second there, I thought we were in trouble. So he
Now he has a move. Oh.
He doesn't have a move. I don't think he has one here, but I think she does. And he looks at her and knows that she's going to scuttle this Namora plan somehow. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's now like, all right, for a second there, I thought we were in trouble, but whatever you're up to, I'm in.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So now in the next scene, we're with Gus and Aurora. So back in the whole political realm of things. And so Gus is talking about how he's put together some talking points for this anti-competition inquiry. And so as he's talking about this, Aurora says, look, I know you've squeezed yourself dry on all this prep. Thank you. But we need to stand down because basically this anti-competition inquiry is dead. For whatever reason, the health secretary has taken it off the agenda, which clears the way for Amazon to buy FastAid, basically guarantees the NHS contracts over Rican. She said, I guess eventually the world will be one big conglomerate. And so just to remind ourselves, because this is obviously a super critical point, in the earlier parts of the season, we had DVD go to Jesse about how he loved FastAid. And to kind of to spite him, despite DVD, Harper suggested that he short FastAid and buy Rican. He got into Rican initially because of the block trade, then bought a whole bunch more. He has control over Rican. But in order for them to be able to maximize the value, they need these NHS contracts. But the NHS can either award the contracts to Rican or it sounds like FastAid. So
and what Gus has found in all of his research is that there is a precedent, in fact, for blocking a merger of this size. So Gus has gone ahead and done all this legwork preemptively. So we know in the background that if the inquiry were to go through, the merger would likely be blocked. Mm-hmm. Now that the inquiry has been blocked, it's full speed ahead for FastAid.
Exactly.
Which Jesse is short. So this should be.
He's not only short FastAid, but he's also long Rican. So it's doubly bad. He's basically getting hit on both sides. Yes. Whereas if FastAid, if the merger got blocked, he would make a ton of money because he now has two trades going in his direction. But this is doubly bad because, And so we know that Gus is aware of what is going on. This is obviously non-public information. So anyway, next scene, we're back on the trading floor and it opens up and you have DVD and Rishi who are basically in this off-camera dialogue talking about how hungover they are because they were just trashed the night before. And the camera then zooms in on Robert as he gets a call from Nicole saying, Robbie, to which he replies, I don't think you should call this desk again. And so Nicole says, oh, really? Your seat costs the financial institution more dollars than you're worth. And I've got a ticket. Make me a price in cable, half a yard. And so Robert says no. DVD, by the way, right behind him, turns around and is like, client, Mellon Mercer? And because, by the way, he has no other clients. And so Nicole says she wants $500 million. Because, by the way, this goes back to the lingo where it's, you have yards and sticks. And a yard is $1 billion and a stick is $1 million. But so again, because she said half a yard, that means that she wants $500 million in cable. Rishi hears this.
Just to remind you guys from our earlier episodes, is dollar sterling, the FX.
The FX, exactly. So Rishi then yells, half a yard, let's fill them. Like he says, this is reputation changing commission.
Hang on, let's stop right there. Because first of all, we haven't given a direction. Okay, she says, make me a price in half a yard, right? She's asking for a two-way market. When a client says, make me a price and doesn't give you a direction, they're asking for a two-way market. So Rishi's like, let's fill them. Well, which way are they going? You can't fill something if you don't have an order and you don't have a direction. One of the all-time classic things that happened to me when I was on the desk is my boss picked up the phone to execute a trade with insert $9 trillion money manager here. And the guy goes, make me a two-way, and whatever it was, 250 Fannie Fives or something like that. And he made him a two-way. And my boss goes, done, and hangs up the phone. Didn't say which way. Didn't say I buy or I sell. It was like a classic all-time, MD not used to executing trades move. But that's kind of what they're guilty here. We don't know if she wants to buy or sell.
This is fair. Yeah. So Rishi also asks Robert, why are they calling you? And so Nicole on the other line says, tell him it's because you're good at your job. So she knows she has the leverage. And DVD says to Robert, it's quite a wad of cash. It doesn't change what happened, but it's your call. I also think, though, it's like DVD, he acts like he's so principled. Like, he's not. I mean, he's kind of just like, do whatever you think you should do, you know?
But I mean, to be fair, in the moral scale that is industry, it is the most principled reaction of anyone who is a non-Kenny, non-Venetia, right? In the CPS world, where everything is much more morally gray, this is like, do what you feel is right. It's great for the firm, but I can understand that it's shitty for you. So you do you, right?
Oh, see, I didn't even see it as like it's shitty for him, because it's almost like, are we blacklisting this client or not? Right? That should be a decision from the top down, but whatever. So anyway, Robert looks at Rishi and just says what Nicole told him to. It's because I'm good at my job. And so Rishi, who, by the way, doesn't know the history, and if he did, he obviously wouldn't care.
He wouldn't care.
No, he would not give a shit. He just says, smile, lad. You look like you just smelled an open grave. Tell him we'll work it. And Nicole says,
but by the way, we'll work what? You
I know,
nobody order. Like, what if it's, why don't you execute it at market? This is the worst placed inquiry of all time.
Yep. And so Nicole then says, work it by half a yard and send me the fill. But then she adds, you see, things happen and then things are fine, before she hangs up. Like, she knows that because of her money, there's almost like no consequences, because she can just buy her way out of it.
Yeah, she lives in a world where this is just a lover's quarrel. We're just going to sweep this under the rug because this is how I operate. This is how I've always operated, and I've done it with impunity. So why would this be any different, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're back in the next scene, up in the PWM floor with Celeste and Yaz. And Yaz says, I think we shouldn't be representing men like my father. And Celeste asks, men like what? Objectionable? Because that's a sliding scale. Many qualify. And Yaz is just like, but I'm not comfortable working for him. And so then Celeste goes on to tell the story about how she says, 3 of my guys were in the little black book that the FBI seized from Jeffrey Epstein. Did you know he made a pass at me? And then Yaz asks, Epstein? To which Celeste says, no, your father. But Yaz hears the story and she's like, I'm sorry. And Celeste is like, for what? We're all adults. She says, every client, every dollar, you probe deep enough, an advantage has been taken. Angle has been played. So do you want to operate within a system and be successful? Or do you want to dream you can change and be left behind? So this is the same kind of advice that I feel like Yaz has gotten every single time. Like, there's been anything where she tries to take the moral high ground. But this one is obviously more personal because it's her dad.
I mean, I think it's funny, right? Yaz has undergone this transformation over the arc of the season, where she was comfortable being the standard bearer of the institution as she understood it to work early on. When Venetia first started on the desk, she was like, these are the rules, I followed them, now you have to follow them. Wanted to torture her the same way, being grilled on the desk. And, you know, Venetia looked visibly hurt, and that was an okay response to have. And everyone was like, what's wrong with you? So I think Yasmin has kind of come back around and done a full 180 and been like, you know what? This doesn't sit right with me. My dad doesn't sit right with me. The way that Celeste does business no longer sits right with me.
Yeah.
So what Celeste is doing to Yasmin is what Yasmin was doing to Venetia, right? Yasmin has decided this is very wrong and is saying, like, I'm sounding the alarm. Let's not do business like this anymore. And Celeste is like, what are you talking about? We're all adults. We know the way the system works. You can operate within it and be successful, or you can have fun trying to change it, but basically you're on your own if you want to go in that direction. There's no female allyship here. There's no like, oh my God, you're right. When Yasmin reacts like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Celeste's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I am willing to use it for whatever I can for my own purposes. So I think it's a really interesting arc for Yasmin now, not feeling quite sure where she fits along this and saying, I'm going to put my foot down and stop it, and not being successful.
Yeah. So in the next scene now, if you remember, Robert, Harper, and Gus all still live together. So Gus walks into his house. Obviously, Harper is there. And Gus says, Aurora sent him home. The project he's working on is not happening. And Harper's ears perk up. She's like, project for Aurora? Healthcare space? And Gus is just like, have a day off. So Harper asks, did it have anything to do with where the NHS contracts would land? Gus is just like, it means I'm tired and you're getting on my nerves.
Her tone totally changes right the way right here, because she was like, oh, like anything interesting? And so the second he tries to blow her off, her face just completely switches and her tone goes cold. And she could not be more explicit in what she's trying to get out of him.
Yeah. So she says, any intel, any inside track. I mean, it's just words to you, but for me, it's gold. Jesse is betting against FastAid. He is short as much as he can carry, and I need to be able to give him edge on it. And so I do wonder if she was also partially saying that because obviously Gus has a very close relationship with Jesse too. But Gus still kind of like is trying to do the principal thing. And he says, this is beneath you. And then Harper just keeps pushing. She says, is it about a merger? I mean, what the fuck else does FastAid have to offer anybody except fucking floor space? It is about a merger. Amazon? Blocking a merger? Your silence means yes. Government due diligence. And Gus replies, anti-competition. Harper says, inquiry? Fuck. When is that happening? I mean, it's perfect. That will kill FastAid once and for all and put Jesse Short back in the money. Aurora's department is killing the Amazon's purchase of FastAid. I knew it. I mean, she must. She must have a stake in Rican, right? And Gus finally is just at his wit's end, and he takes his glasses off and he screams, fuck off. It's not happening. None of it. There is no inquiry. And Harper asks, how is it that Amazon is being allowed to buy FastAid without a whimper? And Gus replies, ask my boss. Actually, ask her boss. He then walks away saying, I need to fucking lie down. So she finally pushed him to the point where like he was so tired. He just like wanted to go to bed, and she got the info she wanted out of him.
I think it's also so interesting too that immediately the reason that Harper suspects for the anti-competition inquiry being blocked is that it's insider trading on behalf of the people who are making that decision in the government, right? She automatically ascribes the most nefarious purposes to why something like this would have been done. And I'm not saying it wasn't, by the way. I'm not saying that the government has its hands clean in any of this. I agree. Yeah. Why would they be blocking this inquiry? It doesn't necessarily smell so
well, I
good.
mean, to your point, by the way, Aurora did seem to have some kind of connection. She was friends with, oh my gosh, who's that woman who is like the German fund?
Anna.
Yeah. She was at the shoot, right? So like they're cozy. So there is probably something. But to Gus's point, it wasn't Aurora's decision. It was Aurora's boss.
Right.
So the next scene now, we're at Jesse's house. She's basically going to tell him. And so she walks in.
And by the way, I love how everyone can get Jesse's address. Like,
not only get his address, but like get into his house. And he does comment on that. So she comes in and she apologizes for her blind conviction. And he seems a little bit like he's defeated. He says, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be right. It's the only thing that animates me. And then Harper tells him to stop out before he starts hemorrhaging money. And she says, just say hypothetically, the government plans to stop any anti-competition inquiry into Amazon's acquisition of FastAid. Jesse replies, FastAid goes to the moon and my short burns a massive hole in my pocket. Harper says, so hypothetically, my edge is stop out now. And then Jesse asks, are you talking hypothetically or hypothetically? And Harper replies, whichever one of those is less hypothetical. So then Jesse is like, oh shit, this is insider trading. So he replies
explicitly, do you want to walk any of this back?
He's like, the info you gleaned from your roommate. It doesn't take a savant to piece together that you got this information from Gus. You're now sharing it with me, but also, are you trying to get me in trouble? And then he asks if she's wearing a wire. And
by the way, that would be my first assumption. If someone came to me and was like, here's some insider trading info, I'd be like, cool, not falling for that. Like, right. You know, have a nice long walk off the dock.
Yeah. So Harper's taken aback and she's kind of like, what? And Jesse says, fuck. And then he goes over and gives her a hug to make sure that she's not wearing a wire.
But if you look at the expression in her face on the other side of the hug, she has this almost longing expression on her face. She like closes her eyes briefly. She thinks this is the end of their relationship.
Oh, I thought she thought it was like him accepting her apology. You thought it was the opposite? Actually, I guess that's true.
I thought it was her being like, listen, I'm doing the right thing. I'm admitting I was wrong, but why would you ever continue getting coverage from someone who was so blatantly wrong? I'm giving you my one last edge to do what's right, right, make amends with you, and then I will cede this relationship. But I don't think she was willing to cede the relationship on him just never speaking to her again and picking up the phone. I think she couldn't sleep with that.
That's a good point. So Jesse says it's time for her to leave. Although not in an angry way.
Because he realizes she's not mic'd.
And she says, maybe I never knew what you wanted. Thank you for the opportunity. So yeah, you're 100% right. She thinks that this is the end of their relationship. And by the way,
you see the camera like linger on Jesse for a moment. And he's standing there kind of rubbing the back of his neck contemplatively. Watching that scene, I was like, this relationship is not over.
Yeah. But this also I thought was interesting is when they had the words industry appear on the screen, which was much further in. Yeah. You know what I mean? Than
this
like
was all the prelude to the episode.
Yep. Okay. So now in the next scene, they're outside. Harper goes, sees Rishi smoking, asks if he's nervous about the wedding. And Rishi asks, aren't you persona non grata here? Because DVD had obviously suspended her. And she says that it's all up in the air. I need to speak with Eric. And then she asks if she can borrow Rishi's card to get in. Because you had made this point in the last episode that like when you're suspended, your card stops working. So like how she was able to get in to be there like on the trading floor, rifling through all the papers and shit is like
Eric
that.
must have let her in then, but even so, like, because it was the middle of the night, so what, security is more lax? No. I 100% was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, giving someone your badge, especially someone who has been suspended for wrongdoing, even if Rishi and Harper are now at surface level okay because they're part of this group of mutineers together, you still don't give your badge to someone that you don't trust. And I don't believe that there's actual trust between them.
Oh, definitely not. No. So in the next scene, we have Eric and Harper who are plotting, and Harper is vaping in Eric's office. And he tells Harper that Adler's in town for Riff. He's got to sit down with him, although he doesn't know it yet. He says, if we need the opening, it's ours.
But I love how he like, if we need it, like, but he doesn't even know what the plan is. He's counting on Harper having a plan. He's like, I'm probably going to need to do something. I'm getting contingencies lined up. But like, this is all you, whatever you're doing.
But to your point, he says, do we need it? And Harper, I think, is finally at the point that she has admitted defeat. And she says, I think Bloom is out. And she asks, where does that leave us now? And Eric says, without Bloom, not even Shogun will have us. Harper says, my UK visa is contingent on a job here. I built a life here. Going back to the US would be a defeat. And Eric says, my last trip to New York was in Nadir. And Harper says, I'm alive here. So then they see, Eric looks at the TV and says, your friend lives for the limelight. So on the TV, you hear someone say, I'm going to be joined by Jesse Bloom. The interviewer starts talking about how his CNBC appearance at the start of the pandemic was historic. You know, the panic, the fear, you deserve a Tony. He's on, I think he's on CNN.
He's on CNN, which is, no one would be watching CNN.
No.
They'd be watching CNBC.
I just was surprised that they were as accusatory, argumentative, confrontational, like
confrontational with him,
accusing him of like making up that there was going to be this horrible thing that happened with COVID. Like, honestly, if there was someone who was on CNN in like March of 2020 saying shit's going to get real, I'm sorry, that was correct.
That was something that I wasn't as dialed in on here, but I can see that 3 or 4 years out, let's say, I think this is supposed to be like 1 to 2 years out even, the hedge fund that profited from COVID might not be seen, especially on CNN and not CNBC, as like, oh, this was such a great trade. More like, you profited while the world was burning, which also is something that they bring up in their framing of him, which we'll get to.
But like, if you're upset about something, be upset about the fact that it happened, not the fact that someone made money off of it.
Philosophically, I'm with you. I just think it's consistent with how we might see journalists portray this and how we have seen journalists portray similar events, which we're going to talk about in history.
But it was more the fact they said the panic, the fear, you deserve a Tony. No. I mean, again, there was a tremendous amount of fear. And especially as someone who was living in New York City at the time, that was ground zero. I mean, everyone was fucking terrified. And if someone went on freaking TV and said, this is going to be bad, it's like, no, it was bad because of the actual situation and what was happening. It wasn't because someone was stoking fear. So there's a difference between like doomsday, you know what I mean? Like, like Ray Dalio, like you read his stuff and you're like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But he's been saying that now for like however many years. There was actually this one meme where someone said, shit, if the market doesn't tank, like I feel so bad for Ray because like he's constantly talking about how it's going to go down. So that's my bigger thing is that like it actually was a epically bad time, and raising the alarm about it was, I think, just sort of calling a spade a spade. But anyway, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you talk.
No, it's fine. I appreciate your passion. There's so much packed in this one scene. I have like 6 pages about this.
Okay, I'll let you take over from here.
First of all, in this scene, we get the name of Jesse's hedge fund for the first time. It is Crotona Park Capital. Kristen, do you know what Crotona Park is?
I have no idea. Is it Jurassic Park?
No. That would be amazing if it were like Cretaceous Park. No, but if you guys are familiar with any other hedge fund or private equity fund names, right? They're typically like Apollo, Ares, Oak Tree, Millennium, Tiger, right? They're very lofty, or they're like Greek gods, or they're things that position people as portents of the future. Crotona Park is a park in the South Bronx. So Jesse is hitting us over the head with his whole origin story of his rags to riches rise, that he didn't have the network. He isn't part of the elite. He is just a kid from the South Bronx who's now working to find his place in society. So I don't think that that's an accident.
Yeah.
And so as he's in this interview, he starts texting Harper. And he texts Harper with the instructions to, quote unquote, find any remaining Rican shares on the open market and buy them now.
Yep.
And so we see Harper get this text and it's like, oh my God. We still have the interview going on, and the interviewer starts chiding him for basically checking his phone. Like, oh, sorry, like, are we keeping you or whatever? And he says,
which is weird, by the way, on live TV to be checking your phone.
This is a very confrontational interviewer. I do not disagree with your take on that whatsoever.
Oh, no, sorry. I was actually like sympathizing for once with the interviewer in the sense that, like, I mean, if you're on CNBC, like, you probably shouldn't be on your phone, or CNN.
Again, he's on CNN. Still. But anyways, so he says, sorry, it's my kid. We're very close, while looking at the screen kind of meaningfully, almost as though he's looking directly to Harper. Like they film it, right? Obviously, you'd be like, why is he looking at the cameraman so creepily, right? And so remember, when Jesse was supposed to go on that Bloomberg conference, when Harper had been advising him to get on there and do what he did with the COVID trade and talk his own book, he bailed on that because he was trying to rescue his relationship with Leo. And Leo needed him. She felt like she'd been abandoned for his family. Like she wasn't the chosen relationship that he was looking to foster. It was Leo. Those fences have been mended. Now it's about his relationship with Harper. Harper is the child that he is concerned about here. And he's giving her that dual meaning there.
Yeah.
But again, one thing that really frustrates me about this plot point that we're about to get into is that he could have just as easily gone on during that Bloomberg conference, talked his own book, and moved the market then. We now know that he has inside information about the inquiry not happening, but I would argue that he didn't need that inside information
100%.
to do what he's about to do. So that's frustrating to me from just a narrative plot point.
I actually thought that was why he was doing it this way, that this isn't insider trading.
Well, he hasn't said anything yet, so let's get to it. But before we even get to that, there's a bigger narrative framework that you need to understand in which this conversation is happening that involves a little bit of a history lesson. So off camera, while Harper's like looking at her phone, we hear the interviewer saying that you were big in the Bank of England trade in 1992 and you were big in the poker trade in 1998. I think it's important for our listeners who may not know what they are referencing here to understand the broader scope and understand basically like the legacy that they are placing Jesse into here. The Bank of England in 1992 was when George Soros, quote unquote, broke the Bank of England. You will hear a lot of old farts like us on Wall Street talk about this, and I think it's definitely worth the small history lesson. NPR actually did a great little episode on this. If you ever listen to their Planet Money, they told the whole story. We should link to it in the show notes. It's like a 30-minute episode, unlike this, which will probably be 3 hours. They do a good job. And honestly, they should do a whole industry episode off of what happened because truth is stranger than fiction. It's better than anything you can make up on TV. So I'm going to tell you guys the story. So at the time, a man called George Soros was running a macro hedge fund with his buddy Stan Druckenmiller, who also ran Duquesne Capital. Fun fact, Duquesne was one of the first hedge funds I ever covered before they like kind of closed down. Anyways, they are two of, I would argue, like the all-time biggest names in the hedge fund world. And when you hear about like these legendary hedge fund managers that get paid like $250,000 a year, like these are the prototypes of those guys.
$250,000? You mean $250 million?
$250 million. Yes, $250 million. Yeah, 100% or more. So for all of you youngins out there, / like people who are not European monetary policy experts, which I am not, before we had the euro, we had something called the exchange rate mechanism, or the ERM. And that was established in the year of our Lord, 1979. And it kind of laid the groundwork for what would ultimately become the European Economic and Monetary Union. It basically stipulated that exchange rates between certain European member countries would stay pretty pegged relative to one another. That all being done while they still had their own currency and their own monetary policy. So their central banks could set their own rates and they still had their own independent currencies. So like the premise was that the Italian lira and the Deutsche Mark would kind of have a fixed relationship to one another, but like their interest rates might not be the same. So a little bit puzzling how you could have that work in theory, but this was an early monetary policy, that kind of thing. And we'll see why it no longer exists in a second here. But so again, just because two currencies are supposed to be pegged to one another, it doesn't just like magically happen because you say so. You still have open market forces driving supply and demand and driving these things up and down. So if they are starting to move outside of the fixed range, you have to have central banks step in and intervene, either through the currency itself or through raising and lowering rates if they don't want to just let their currencies freely float. Okay. So even though the ERM dates back to 1979, the UK didn't join until 1990, when they were actually in the beginning stages of a recession. And listen, we're not here for like an entire AP European history lesson, although I actually think this should be taught in AP European history. But just in case you're not aware, what had happened right before 1990? We had the Berlin Wall come down. So all of a sudden you had the reunification of East and West Germany. So we kind of have this perfect storm for the UK and a lot of other European countries because they're all in a recession, but you have the reunification of East and West Germany. So you have massive investment all of a sudden into Germany. And what happens when you want to invest in a currency? Well, you have to first acquire money in that currency to invest. So you need to sell out of other currencies, namely the currencies of, I don't know, Europe's second largest economy, the UK, to go buy German Deutschmarks. So the Deutschmark starts appreciating very rapidly relative to the currencies of all these other countries, the UK front and center among them, again, as Europe's second largest economy. And so the UK has two options, right? They can either defend their currency so they can stick to this peg and keep it very high, or they can withdraw from the ERM. Now, they chose to try and defend their currency, so we'll talk about how this all played out in a second. Now, amidst this whole backdrop, we have a crackerjack 30-year-old analyst at Soros, who's covering Europe at the time. I'm going to save his name for the end of this story because I think it's just so perfect how it all comes together. He brings all of this to the attention of George and Stan and all the other senior decision makers. And he's like, this is an unsustainable situation. Okay, you've got a German economy that suddenly looks like it's going to go to the moon versus all these other economies, again, the UK most notably, that's in a recession that's going to see more outflows. So the guys at Soros are like, wait a minute, hang on. So you think that either things are going to stay exactly the same, or the UK is going to have to massively devalue its currency and leave the ERM. When you enter into a short position, like Jesse's short, right? We always talk about this. The problem with a short position is that something can theoretically go infinitely higher. There's no cap on where something can go. But the stakes of this game, where that either something stays exactly the same or drops precipitously, you are supposed to do that trade all day, every day, because the stakes of a short are no longer in play. It's basically unlimited upside. Maybe you lose whatever it cost you to finance the short. So they go all in on this trade. We're not talking like just a social size position or whatever, but they build up a position ultimately of a short of 15 billion sterling. Okay, this is such a huge short. And as this starts to gain momentum, everyone else in the market starts piling on, realizing what's happening. The position was orders of magnitude larger than the size of the fund itself. This is 15 billion in 1992 dollars. That's a large trade today. This was absolutely massive back in the day. So the Bank of England sees what's happening and they desperately try to defend their currency. Remember, what tools do we have? We don't have that many tools as a central bank. You have monetary policy, right? So they can raise and lower interest rates. And they actually have reserves in their coffers. And so the first thing they do is they're all part of this joint economic council with the Germans and with everybody else. And the UK leads that council. And they ask the Germans to lower their interest rates. They're like, hey guys, we know that you're like super scared of inflation and all those things, but like, would you mind just lowering their interest rates? I really think that that'll help us out. And the Bundesbank is like, no. And again, back to our previous interest rate currency differential. If you think about it, all else being equal, you want to invest your money in a country that has higher interest rates because all else being equal, you want to get that higher return. So they're trying to encourage people to move out of Germany back into England to help appreciate their currency. Germany says no, absolutely not. Okay, option two, we're going to move our own interest rates. So now, despite being in a recession, mind you, on the morning of September 16th, 1992, the UK hikes rates from 10% to 12%.
Oh, wow.
Nothing happens. They hiked rates 200 basis points and their currency doesn't move. Okay, they panic. That afternoon, they say, we're going to hike rates another 300 basis points. Nothing happens. The UK started the day with 40 billion in currency reserves. So they start desperately going out and trying to buy up their own currency, right? And they're doing clips of 300 million at a time, 500 million at a time, $1 billion at a time, but it is like spitting into the ocean. Okay. They are up against this $15 billion short that's already there and everybody else in the market who has piled on.
Oh, wow.
They see the writing on the wall and they finally just give up. All right. So that evening, they like came out on the steps of the Treasury and said, all right, we're exiting the ERM. Forget about our rate hikes. We're not doing that. And the sterling dropped 15% in that one day alone. It is now called Black Wednesday. So if you ever hear anyone talk about that, like, it's funny. Black Friday, it's like, it's a good thing. All the stores are in the black. Yeah. But all other like Black Monday, anything that's like in the finance world.
It should be called Red Monday. Why would it be black? But anyway,
because again, we all look down on accountants in this industry, apparently. So we don't like to use their terms. I do not know. So 2 fun facts. I learned about this from the NPR podcast. Soros was not going out and advertising that they were doing this. They weren't like, it's me, right? And it was 1992. There was much less transparency in the market. Information traveled a lot less quickly.
Yeah.
So the way that the world found out about this is a month later, there was a dinner in the UK with a bunch of journalists, and the CEO of Fiat Motors said, I made more money in the last month by being a client of George Soros's hedge fund than my company did this entire year. The next morning, the Daily Mail ran a cover story with George Soros's face, and it said, I made $1 billion as the pound crashed. So back to kind of the scene that we are setting with Jesse Bloom, right? It's the idea in the press's eyes that these billionaires are profiteering while we truly have like the destruction of the UK economy. This took years to recover from. And the second thing that I learned is, guess who was the 30-year-old crackerjack analyst?
Oh, Scott Bessent.
Scott Bessent.
Yeah, I think it was probably on Ted Seide's podcast when Scott Bessent was talking about being part of that trade. And
it was his idea.
Was it really? Oh my God.
He was the guy. He was the 30-year-old guy who was like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, like, again, the hedge fund reportedly made $1 billion off the trade. My guess is it was probably more, because you wouldn't just have the currency expression on. You probably had other macro expressions on in equities and fixed income and all these other things. But not only that, it's just so important now to think about it in the context of what's going on right now in our country, because we have a Secretary of the Treasury who knows, I would argue better than anyone else,
100%.
how important it is for a central bank to maintain their credibility. I mean, can you imagine if in 2008, Ben Bernanke had gone out and been like, we're going to cut rates 200 basis points, and nothing had happened. And then he was like, we're going to cut rates 300 basis. And then, I mean, willy-nilly changing policy at the drop of a hat. Like the central bank, like they only have so many tools. You have to guard those tools so preciously and guard your credibility. And it's funny now because like historians look back on this and they're like, it was great that they devalued their currency and like it paved the way for, you know, the resurgence in their economy. Again, not an expert in the UK and stuff like that. So much ink has been spilled over like how this all played out and all of the good or bad things that came from it. But placing Jesse at the center of that and saying like you were part of that legacy is just something that A, you should understand if you're interested in finance. B, what a cool freaking story, by the way. They should 100% do an industry episode as a takeoff on all of that. And C, I have no idea what the poker trade of 1998 was. So if
anybody knows,
I'm super curious. Okay.
It could be a made up trade. I will say it's also so funny because I did not realize we were alive when the Berlin Wall fell. Again, probably because we were what, 7 or 8, but like 5, whatever. Same thing. 5, 7, 8, plus or minus 3. That is so crazy to me, especially because like you look at what Germany is now and it's like they're basically like, you know, they're like holding up the EU, but also so interesting in light of just the political climate that it's like George Soros is the big bad boogeyman on the left. And then it's like you have Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary for a Republican administration. So this is just so interesting for so many reasons.
It's such good history. I'm so glad I get to tell this story. It brought me much joy. And again, we'll link that NPR podcast. They tell the story way better. They bring on Rob Johnson, who was actually there at the time, who was like executing trades from his car phone because his wife was a Fed governor. He couldn't have her hear that was going on. All right, back to Harper.
Back to Harper.
So she looks down at her phone. She runs downstairs, logs into her computer. DVD's like, and she goes, wait, just trust me. All right. She pulls up on her monitor, Jesse on CNN, and he's saying, if you guys want to know why I do what I do, the answer is thrillingly simple, and it won't satisfy you at all. Markets make sense to me. I find them as legible as anything in the world. And damn it, I'm nothing if I can't make a cheeky punt. And then the reporter asks him if part of the appeal is the idea that he might be remembered and something about having a legacy. So again, our theme that's carrying throughout this episode. And that ties also into all of his previous conversations about, Leo potentially following in the footsteps, like what would his hedge fund be named, right?
Yeah.
Securing his legacy by getting Leo a spot at Oxford to offset his Crotona Park blue collar background, all that fun stuff, right? And it's funny because Jesse actually looks really taken aback by that question, but it's also because he's typing to Harper and she says, "Are you sure?" And he says, "You want to cover me? Fucking cover me now." And again, I think it's just so interesting that they have all of this happening. There's so much packed into this. Mm-hmm. And when Jesse finally realizes what the reporter is asking him, he says, "I guess the little voice we all carry around inside of us, Jiminy Cricket, and I go way back. He's real good at telling me how to make money." So he's referencing his conscience, which is what he's thinking about, because it's becoming very clear to us that he's about to do something unethical. But I actually don't think she was asking about the ethics at all. I think she was just asking about the why, right? Mm-hmm. So Harper asked Rishi, how much Rican is available on the market? And Rishi asks, "Are you fucking me again here?" Because remember what happened last time.
Well, by the way, and I just want to add in, I mean, how insane is this? Because she was up with Eric. She then ran down to the trading floor and DVD is like, "What the actual fuck? You were suspended." Because by the way, she had to steal Rishi's badge to get in the first place. Mm-hmm. And now she's literally sitting here like asking to do a trade when she just got suspended for fucking over Rishi, doing a trade for Bloom.
It comes in on her phone.
Yeah.
Like, there is a whole reason you have to do all these things over recorded lines and over IB chats because it's all monitored.
Yeah.
So you cannot execute trades this way for very good reason because someone could be doing something illegal. So Jesse asks her to get him as much Rican as she can on the open market. We already know that Bloom, like you said, is super long Rican. It's interesting to me that he's adding to that position that that's what he did. I don't even know
how he is able to add to it, because I would assume that a lot of what else is out there is not freely available. Isn't it the freaking CEO who owns it? Like,
that's such a great question, because when Harper asks Rishi, "How much can you get me?" he says, "No idea. We'll have to check the free float."
Yeah.
Float is the slang, right, for how much of a security is trading in the secondary market. Yeah. And Harper says, "Source it, buy it, don't need a price." Meaning do whatever you can, get your hands on whatever you can. We have a buyer who is not price sensitive, just execute. Yeah. So you're 100% right. I don't even know how much he would be able to add to that position. But in my mind, I was like, isn't the more elegant expression to just add to your short in FastAid? The only reason I can think is because the anti-competition inquiry, or lack thereof, directly relates to FastAid. Him trading in FastAid would be more of a signal of, I had inside information about this company. Whereas by adding to his position in
That's a
Rican,
good point. Really good point.
It's more oblique, right? It's like, oh, well, how would I know that they were going to benefit from this? Or even though obviously.
Yeah.
So she says, again, he's adding, keep the tap on. And you can see their text chain. Harper says, "Are you serious? What are you going to do?" And he says, "If you want to cover me, fucking cover me now." She says, "Done." So once Harper sends the text message saying done, Jesse ends this back and forth banter with the reporters. And he says, "You want to hear something serious? You were speaking earlier about the proliferation of big tech and its overreach into every corner of our lives. Anywhere else in this world, Amazon's purchase of FastAid would be waved through. I'm just glad that in a place like Britain, they still take anti-competition seriously. I'm glad they seek to weed out government corruption and cronyism. I'm glad they still have reverence for the institutions that made them great." So this is clearly a direct challenge to the government to now reverse the policy that we know through Gus that they've implemented of standing down by praising their level of diligence on this kind of deal. He's forcing them into a corner where now they have to run the investigation or they risk losing face in the public eye. By the way, I love how subtle this communication is. Think about the kind of communications we now get in the press. It's just,
seriously.
Absurd. And so the headline running across the bottom in all caps says, "Jesse Bloom to UK government, interrogate Amazon FastAid acquisition," just in case we needed to be hit over the head with it, right? And so the reporter now says to him, I thought this was really interesting,
has an anti-competition inquiry surely been tabled now into the deal?
So I wanted to make the point that in American English, to table something means to set it aside.
Yeah.
if I say like, let's table this conversation right now, that means like, let's stop talking about this or whatever. In British English, it means the exact opposite. It means it's been set forth for consideration. So this is like a very American UK distinction that I just wanted to make.
Oh, yeah. But basically, as Jesse says, I'm sure this government and their love of nostalgia will do right by FastAid and do a full and proper inquiry. And so this is where you can see, like, Harper has the Bloomberg screen for both Rican and FastAid, with Rican going up and FastAid going down. And then, as Rishi then says to Harper, as he's looking over his shoulder, Bloom's making money on both sides of this trade, which, like, duh. I mean, yes.
Yeah. So the second the news prints, the first print, you get a gap on either side, right? So FastAid gaps lower to 302. So it's immediately trading down 4%, and Rican trades up 5% to 48.50. The next print, you have FastAid down 9% and Rican up 10. And the next print, which is the last one we see, FastAid is down 14% and Rican is up 15%. So before we cut away, you have FastAid at 270.31 and Rican at 53.25. I went back to the short to the point of pain episode on the day that FastAid first started trading up, where his short was getting squeezed. It looks like it was something around 175.
And where is it today?
It starts in the threes. So again, it started the TV broadcast at 314.77.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And ends it at 270. And I think he got short probably with a one handle, just based on that original graph that we saw. But again, probably
so he hasn't made money yet, but he's losing less money.
Yeah, and I think the implication is that this will probably
100%.
Yeah,
100%. But then on CNN, in response to the interviewer asking, has the anti-competition inquiry surely been tabled into the deal? Jesse then replies, I can't possibly comment. I'm just like everyone else, stuck in the ether making plays. The interviewer then says to Jesse, you'll get burned soon enough. To which Jesse laughs, maybe. The thing people forget about that Icarus dude is before he fell, he flew. And I bet the sun gave off a lovely light. The thing, though, is none of this was like trading on inside information. I mean, it was only in the sense that he knew that it was not going to happen. But yeah, him knowing that he could have done this regardless.
Yes.
But I actually do wonder if part of that was on purpose, because he was trying to not get in trouble for insider trading. But now Harper feels like she's done something terrible, which, by the way, she's done so many bad things. And like, to me, this is the least of the bad things she's done. So it's shocking to me that she's like as upset as she is about this. But she then goes up and goes into Eric's office. Eric says, Jesus, you look like you just bore witness to infanticide. And Harper asks for a drink of water. She basically takes this huge gulp. And she then says, I think I just helped Bloom do something. Eric says, unethical, illegal. And Harper asks, where is the line? And Eric says, it should be big and fucking red. Harper says, I told him the anti-competition inquiry was off the books, but I think he just talked it back into existence because the FastAid short and the Rican long work concurrently. Because again, to your point, as you said, when he was talking about the anti-competition thing, he was buying Rican, he was not shorting FastAid. I hadn't put that together, but I think that's such a good point. Eric asks that knowledge was confidential and privileged before you gave it to him, to which Harper says yes. And Eric replies, that's insider trading. Harper says, I just thought he was going to use the info to stop out on his short. Also still insider trading, by the way.
Of course.
I didn't know he was going to use it to move the market with a few public sentences. And Eric says, I think you led him to water and he drank.
Great, by the way, because she is literally chugging water in this scene. And I think it's so interesting that Harper confesses this to Eric. I think Eric is the only person in this entire cast of characters to whom she would confess something like this.
Yeah.
Her relationship with him is definitely special.
I mean, he knows everything that she's done for the most part.
But so it's interesting because Eric now has obviously like a legal obligation to report both Harper and Bloom, which seems highly unlikely that he would ever do because we all know A, how morally gray Eric is, but B, it also completely now resets the balance of power between the two of them relative to what it was just before she exited the room.
Yeah.
He was sitting there saying, I booked us this meeting in case we need it. Let me know what your strategy is. Like before we got on this call, talked about the title of the last episode being Lone Wolf and Cub. We were like, who's the cub and who's the wolf? Is Eric the wolf and Harper's the cub or vice versa?
Well, because we almost always talk about the titles and it was like the one time we didn't.
Just because I felt like it was so self-explanatory.
You were like, it's so obvious. And I was like, but who is the lone wolf and who's the cub?
Exactly. And so now it's like, okay, you can almost see this moment, and there are many moments in this episode where the camera focuses on Eric's face. You are supposed to be watching Eric because things are changing in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so prior to this, Harper's relationship with Bloom was kind of the thing that she'd been holding as her ace up her sleeve.
Yeah.
It was literally the only thing that was going to forge a path forward for Eric in his career in terms of making all these moves, was always hinging on her relationship with Bloom. It's really almost a meta thing of Eric saying that she led him to water and he drank. I do think that over the course of the past 2 seasons, Eric has almost been leading Harper to water, and now she's the one who drank, and she has done something, A, illegal, and B, that gives him back his power in their relationship.
Well, and so then he sits down across from her and says, look me in the eye and tell me you didn't know. Harper replies, I didn't know, meaning she didn't know that he was going to make statements about the deal and use the inside information to try to manipulate the market. And
Do
so
you
Eric's,
believe her when she says that?
yes and no. I mean, look, she didn't technically know exactly what he was going to do. So again, technically, but she probably knew he was going to do something. Like,
yeah, I think she thought he was going to stop out. I didn't think she thought he was going to stop out with her. Remember, she actually told him to like execute the FastAid short with someone else. In fact, like,
yeah.
I think she didn't know this was going to happen. Very honestly,
literally seconds before she gets this text from Bloom, Eric was asking, like, do we have Bloom? She says no. She thought the relationship was dead. So the fact that she's getting a text from him means now all of a sudden she has moves again. It means that she still has his trust. So I think for her, she was just kind of like, I'm going to do what he tells me and like kind of just hope that there's nothing bad behind this. So it wasn't like she knew this was going to happen, but it's like, even if she did, I mean, I don't know that she would have said no, but I don't think she was thinking that hard about this.
Had she known this was going to happen, would she have said no? That's a really great question. I don't think she would have said no.
I don't think she would have said no. Yeah, 100%. That's the other thing is like, to me, this is such a morally gray area that it's so funny too. Like now with everything that's happening with these tariffs, our attorney general sold a bunch of stock, like right before, you know what I mean? Like there's so much gray area now that honestly, this even seems silly to even talk about. I don't know that this would even be technically because him finding out about the squashing of the anti-competition inquiry is what led him to go on and like will it back into existence.
It's the buying of the Rican shares, I think, that is the illegal activity. It's buying it to benefit. Which also,
like, why did he buy it? Like, he didn't need to buy it. He already owns half of it. He was going to benefit anyway. You don't need to buy more.
And again, I just think there are other ways to craft an insider trading plot line, but what we've said from the beginning is that Jesse could have gone on TV and talked his book, which is all he's effectively doing, and knew he was going to move the market because of how they have set him up as like one of the Wall Street prophets. There's people on Wall Street who, when they say something, you're supposed to pay attention. They move markets, right? We have done all this work establishing that Jesse is that person. He doesn't need to add to his Rican position. That's my whole beef with 100%. This episode, an 100%. Otherwise beautifully written episode. And we've worked all season. We know that this was the setup with Gus being in political office. It was like the payoff's here. And to have this be the payoff, this is the only thing about this episode that was disappointing to me, is it's just like, it didn't need to go down this way. And maybe 100%. That's it too. The crimes that are committed are always like the pettiest ones, you know? It's never like that there's—
Or the ones that you get in trouble for. It's like the ones you get caught for. It's like the dumb shit. Again, this whole thing is so gray, and we're seeing it all the time now, to the point that I think, especially in the US, it's just like we're so desensitized to it, which is why I'm like sitting here and I'm like, is this even insider trading? Like, I don't know. I mean, so anyway, back to the actual plot. So Eric says, we can meet Adler, use Bloom, play to stay in London, or we can forget the whole thing. You cut off Bloom at the root, I retire, you go back to New York, but you're playing a young person's game. This is a young person's decision. And Harper says going home is a non-starter. So then Eric says, we're going to lie in the bed you made. I was a little confused at this because it almost seems like he was like testing her somehow.
I think he was giving her an out, right? He was saying, Eric is formulating a plan at this point. And he's saying, listen, if you have a conscience, if you have some moral misgivings about where this is now going to play out, like, here's your out. You know, careers are long. Go back to New York City, start over. Like, you will be okay. I think that's what he's saying here in almost like a fatherly way, that he's willing to back down from the plan that is getting formulated, a young person's game. He's speaking for her and not for himself. I do think that that's why he's giving her an out here, being like, listen, there is a world where I just fade into obscurity and I have to deal with that. But if you're in, you're in.
Mm-hmm. Next scene. So we're back with Gus and Aurora. And Aurora says to Gus, "You have something you want to tell me. You expect me to believe that Jesse Bloom running his mouth about anti-competition committee in public forum was what? Cosmic synchronicity?" Gus asks what he said, and she tells him he spoke about the anti-competition inquiry. Correction, he spoke it into being, or he spoke it back into and onto the agenda. And so Gus is like, "I had no idea." And Aurora laughs, and she pulls out a bottle of alcohol. And she says, "With this news flow, number 10 is cleaning house for another cabinet reshuffle. The prime minister has summoned me this afternoon. He likes me for health secretary." Gus laughs and says, "Maybe we do rule the cosmos," to which Aurora replies, "Seems that way." Gus then says, "I can be loose-lipped when it suits." Aurora then says, "So you leaked it," to which Gus says, "I couldn't possibly comment." They both laugh, and Aurora says, "You understand that with that admission, I have to let you go." And Gus is just like, "Excuse me?" Like, the fact that this was back on the table was good for Aurora. So she was happy about it. He was then trying to be like, well, I can bend the rules a little bit when it suits us. And then she's now like, oh, well, that means you're fired.
No,
and
she 100% entrapped him during this conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
She did.
Yeah.
But she also like kind of had orchestrated this whole thing to begin with. And which she admits at the end.
$1,000,000%.
So that's
it's funny because Harper had suspected that Aurora was doing all of this because she had some like economic stake or whatever. But Aurora's doing all this so she could get a promotion.
But she also knows, and she knows that Gus has this connection with Jesse Bloom, so she's using.
So now
that.
we know that Aurora planted this with Gus in the hopes that he would do this, and this is all going to plan.
Well,
but Gus doesn't know that he's been manipulated. He thinks they're toasting to their success together, and that's why he admits having done it. Yeah, and she has totally played him like a fiddle throughout.
Oh, 100%. And so Aurora says that I have to let you go. And Gus is kind of like, excuse me? But again, to your point, it's not because like she's so moral and all that. No. So she says, Bloom's timing is slightly insidery, she says. We'll spin this as last in, first out. Newbie mistake, simple admin error. And Gus says, I'd almost call this callous. He's kind of laughing now because he's like in on the joke. And Aurora says, people like us know that callous is too emotive of a word. We're pragmatist. I saw the lie of the ball. And then Gus replies, and you played it as it lay. Aurora replies, I didn't even have to swing. But then he says, I'm not sure I'm cut out for politics, to which Aurora says, maybe not. Politicking, perhaps. And then she says, keep Jesse in your debt. Ours is a power of performance. His is a power in reality. So we are starting to get an understanding of her character. Like, she is a lot more ruthless and manipulative, but like not in it. I don't even mean that in a bad way. Like, I just mean that she's playing politics.
This conversation is a mirror image of the conversation we had with Douglas and Eric at Bank of America, when he's like, if the shoes were reversed, you'd applaud me for stabbing you in the back. It's betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. And I think that we see that Aurora is still a financier at heart, right? Like, she came from the finance world and now she's in politics. It kind of suggests that she was groomed in this ruthlessness and has brought it into the world of politics. But I absolutely love the line that Jesse's power in reality. And again, thinking about that Bank of England trade in 1992, it's exactly it, right? It's like the politicians have all the power until they don't, until they get on the wrong side of the market.
She knows exactly what she's doing. Like, when she hired him, she knew that there was that relationship Gus had with Bloom. Like, she knows what she's doing.
And for those of you who aren't familiar, last in, first out is actually like an accounting technical.
Yeah.
I don't know if you teach this in your course.
LIFO, FIFO, I do not.
Yeah,
because I don't.
It's how inventory is treated, right? So it's either as everything's coming into the warehouse, right, and you're stacking things up. Think about, okay, is it the last thing you stacked up inside the door that you sell first, or is it the very first thing that?
Well, it's basically as you're thinking about the cost of things, right? Like, and you need to figure out as you're preparing like an income statement, like what is the cost of goods sold? Actually, it's probably the easiest to understand with these tariffs. As you're thinking about, you're preparing your financials and you're looking at, okay, we sold this product for X. what did it cost us to make it? The last thing that you brought in, if there were tariffs applied, is probably quite more expensive than the first in. So depending which you use, right, is going to impact the cost. So anyway, so yeah, that's a really good point. But no, I don't teach this in accounting. We tend to just be like, the total inventory was this, and we let the accountants deal with the actual specifics of that. So
I just think it's so nice that she phrases it though in finance terms, right? Just making you know that she's still one of these players, right, at heart, even though she's a politician.
Yeah. I actually liked that whole scene because you kind of see this extra dimension to Aurora that I think we all knew was there because she was, like we said many times, like she's friends with Anna. But by the way, Anna, who is like this ESG person. So like in theory, maybe she could be on the side of like good and the people, but it's like, no. She's got her own agenda and she's going to work for whatever is going to benefit her.
An extra dimensionality to Gus watching him get played like this because
and
Gus
also how he
didn't
took
have
it
to get played because he didn't want to give the inside information to Harper. He didn't want to benefit from that. And he was the one who was so nobly sitting around with Aurora's constituents who she wouldn't help and she was avoiding, right? Remember that mentally ill guy at the beginning? Gus had this whole reform track where he was like, you know what? I do love this job. Yes, I'm sitting here willing to work myself to the bone because I care. And the second Aurora was like, here's power, he flips and all of a sudden wants to take credit for having leaked the inside information because he thinks he's getting pulled up along the power chain. So it shows Gus is a much more complex character than he has appeared otherwise all year and all season.
Well, it's almost like he's going back because this is where he started. In the first scene where he was working in investment banking, he had a plan of this many years in finance, then I'm going to be prime minister by 35. Like it's almost like I think bringing back his ambition a little bit. So we'll see where this like takes us a little bit later. So the next scene we now are with Yaz and she's meeting her father at a bar. And she basically goes up to him and says, I think you groomed Teresa. So Teresa, remember, was her nanny who like her father fathered a child with and like ultimately paid off. And Yaz starts to try to get out of him. Like, how young was she when you started a relationship? I think she is thoroughly grossed out by it. And her father just sort of like yells, well, it was your mother's idea to pay her off. Like she was scandalized. She didn't give a fuck about that girl. And then he asks where this is all coming from. But it's very clear that it's like a flip has been switched. And she is just so horrified by the fact that they like went swimming together and like when she started as a nanny like for them she was in her teens, so she's just really grossed out by the whole thing. He finally says, open your eyes, how about some damn gratitude for making you? And Yasmin says, making me? I'm trying to make myself. To which her father replies, you live in the basement of a 14 million pound house that I own. You used to go on 14 holidays a year and send me the bill. You never even bothered to separate your account. Your career earnings flow into my account. And you just tap, tap, tap your little coot card through life. And your career? Maybe ask yourself, how did someone with such average grades and such average university end up at Pierpoint on a desk you didn't apply to? Not so oblivious now, am I? And then he turns away, sips his drink. Yaz tells him that she wants nothing to do with him anymore and walks away. Obviously, this is setting the stage for her to, in theory, try to separate herself and distance herself from her father. And we'll obviously see how well that works out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of different things in this scene. You know, she's gone and confronted Celeste. That didn't go well. So she's going straight to the source of where she thinks all the toxicity in her life comes from. And she thinks it's her dad. And her dad is objectively a toxic person, right?
Horrible.
He is clearly terrible. But I do think it's interesting that they don't pull punches when they say that her mother was the one who wanted to pay off all these women. I think that they are showing that the toxicity is just as deeply institutionalized with the women who have benefited from this system as the men. It's not all men are toxic thing. They are equal opportunity, right? I hadn't known Coots. It's apparently just a private bank with lots of high net worth clients.
I thought it was a slang term.
No, it's a proper noun.
Got it. Okay.
And I think when he gives her that speech of maybe ask yourself how someone with such average grades from just an average university, what he's doing is he's confirming in Yasmin's mind all of the worst things that not only she has suspected about herself, but that Harper has told her about herself.
Yeah.
This is such a blow. Yasmin has always wanted to be liked and respected and promoted for what she brings to the table professionally. And he has just pulled the rug out from under that entire illusion that everything was built on what he had done and what he did to get her there with these terrible things. It's absolutely tragic. And, you know, he is acting all hurt, like he's so scandalized. And so as she storms out, he's yelling, how about we fucking try it? Like, how about we try you building your own thing and see how it goes? This is such a heartbreaking scene because I am so sympathetic to Yasmin. I don't know why.
No. Well, in this case, I mean, you feel for her.
She's trying to do the right thing. She really does want to earn things on her own merits. I truly believe that. She has no idea what that means, but she wants to, in theory.
All right. So now, next scene, we're back at Pier Point, and Eric and Harper are together, and Adler walks in, clearly confused as he thought he was having a meeting with someone else, which we knew Eric had said he was going to do this. So Eric then says, you forgot you put me in charge of planning these high-level meetings, Willie. Why don't you sit down? We have a proposal for you. And Harper says, proposal. It's too soft a word, isn't it? Eric says, I agree. We have a strategy we want implemented. The New York-London merger is a false economy. I want to lead a new super team, a few of us, conflated with our best FX hedge fund guys and the youngest, cheapest, hungriest talent from a few European satellite offices. No longer CPS, but MHFS, macro hedge fund sales. Adler says, this is charming, but holistic strategy is above your pay grade. What is she doing here? Obviously looking to Harper. And Eric says, she has the ear of one of the biggest hedge fund managers in the world. Harper says, she is your fucking business.
Let's pause here for a second.
Okay.
So Adler asks, does the math check out? Like, he actually all of a sudden seems interested, right? And that's when Eric says the whole operation is leaner than an Olympian. If one cog can't hack it, they'll be replaced, but we don't get fat, meaning like, let's go, we're all in this together. Adler's like, no, not with your current head count. It's not going to work. Sorry. And the camera looks at Eric, and Eric is stopped dead in his tracks. He looks like he's trying to work up a response. He was not prepared to answer
I didn't get that
pushback because he had the answer. And Adler's just saying no without running the math. Harper jumps in and she says, no, but they might when a couple of guys you throw the most money at fuck off to your competitor. This is a reveal moment. This is supposed to pack a punch.
So I didn't realize that her and Eric had not talked about fucking him over yet.
Eric was not in on this.
That makes a lot more sense.
You can tell by how often the camera flashes to his face and him clenching his jaw and him swallowing. This is an excellent acting scene by the man who plays Eric Tao. So Adler looks confused and Harper says, oh, you don't know? Well, your Wonder Boy Danny and Rishi are this close to going Japanese. We were part of the cabal that they started. So she is totally flipping the script here and throwing Rishi and DVD under the bus out of nowhere to free up the head count to make the numbers work for this new desk.
Yeah. So Eric then says, but we're here, loyal to the firm, unlike them. So he's now going along with it. But that's a good point. So
like
I didn't realize.
Yeah. You see Eric totally fidgeting and the whole time taking this in and being like, okay, so this is where we're going.
Yeah. But then Harper goes even further. She says, punish them, cut them. And Eric looks at Harper. I actually wrote here, Eric looks at Harper unclear if he was in on this or was surprised that she's saying this. Because I wasn't sure, but you're 100% right.
100% did not know
that she was going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden he starts nodding and he's like, okay, it seems like he's implicitly endorsing Harper's strategy. Like, okay, yeah, I guess this is our only option, right? Like I have no more aces up my sleeve.
Yeah. So Adler asks, how can I fire them if they're contracted away? And so Harper says, their exit strategy is contingent on me. Competitors want Bloom, so competitors need me. And Adler says, that's a lot to weigh up. Compelling and surprising, a lot to mull. Eric says, mull for a short period of time, then enacted. And Adler is like, I don't respond to pressure from below.
Trying to reassert his authority in here when he's basically getting schooled by, what is she, a third-year analyst?
Third-year analyst still,
right?
Yeah.
You've got this woman in here who is running this meeting and just like absolutely trampling both of these men intellectually in terms of her political maneuvering.
And then now they basically are like, we are going to try to blackmail him. So they say, there is a culture of suppression at this place, a human resources field day, a legal liability candy store headed by you, as recently as this week with a graduate in FX sales. And Harper says, the client in question also abused me. I would be happy to testify to that. And Adler now scoffs and he's like, I don't know how you think that this proxy threat expedites my decision. And Eric says, all I'm saying is let's work this out peer to peer. Harper says the institution doesn't suffer. And Adler just says, you are quite something, to which Eric says, she's quite something. I'm an old crank, but we were the future ones, my friend, to Adler, because again, Adler and Eric do have a friendship that goes way back. And Eric then says, William, let's remember to smile. It costs us nothing, which is such a funny comment. That's something that like people say to women all the time, but it's such a...
I think there's so much embedded in the ending of this scene, right? Because remember, Eric didn't know, to the best of our knowledge at least, about Harper being molested by Nicole.
That's true, because she heard it and didn't say anything to him. When DVD brought it up to Eric, she heard it, but just drank her drink.
And I wonder if when Eric had been like, oh, so you clearly had a plan, that's what she was ruminating on and potentially thinking about, that's the last ace I have up my sleeve against Pierpoint to try to get my job back. Yeah. And Eric didn't know about the sexual assault until he heard it from DVD at that bar. Right. So like all of this is brand new information. I think that's both of their last final card that they can play. And when Harper says to Adler, the institution doesn't suffer if this whole thing doesn't come out. To me, it's not just talking about Pierpoint doesn't suffer because that's her big lofty goal. No, you know what I'm saying? No. I think here institution carries a big double meaning this entire institution of toxicity that Celeste has operated in, that Yasmin's dad has operated in, that all these different people have benefited in, that stays intact if this is in fact how they move forward. And also, I didn't read the just smile, it costs us nothing as something that people say to women, but I think that's a really good read. But it's funny because we say that to our little boys when they're stressed out in a big game.
Oh, you do?
Like, just smile. Yeah, you're playing a game, right? Like my son had the baseball championships that they lost after an undefeated season on Saturday. What we kept saying to him was, when you get up there, smile. Remember, you're having fun. This is all just a game. So to me, the way I read that was, this is all just a game, Adler. This is what we're doing. Back to what Aurora did with Gus. Like if this betrayal had been me with Douglas, like how you would have applauded it, the lie of the ball, all these things. To me, that's how I read it. I think your read is great as well.
No, I think your read makes more sense actually, but it is something that, I mean, I'm assuming you have heard this. I always would get told to smile. Like, you don't smile enough. Smile more.
100%. That's women we did a real playing on that, right? Yeah. Where like people are being like, you know, them, why don't you smile more? And it's the woman creepily smiling while she's like washing the toilet or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's a very common thing.
And this is what I actually do love about this show is that they don't play on the gender stereotypes, or they do it in such a way, but that's actually why I kind of liked it but that's why I almost liked it for like them telling Adler that, because like it was like them telling it to a man.
Oh, so, no, it's all fabulous. I love it all. We're bringing that read in both reads can be correct.
So now we are probably at Celeste's apartment, because I think in a prior episode, like she had invited her to a party. There's some people that you should meet. Celeste is drinking. And Yaz tells Celeste, we won't be working with my father anymore, with Charles anymore. And Celeste says, that's not your decision to make. Yaz says, that's not your decision to make, and I've made it. She's basically putting her foot down. Yaz is like, I'm not fucking doing this. So Celeste says, I've looked at people like you my whole life. I've had to do very bad things just to get to where you started. So shall we honor ourselves by dropping naivete? I'm too old to work with crusaders. It's exhausting. The status quo works for us. Can we just stick to that? And Yaz says, because I don't like working like this. You're not professional with me. It's not professional, which by the way, like literally she like slept with her boss. Like nothing about this is professional. Celeste now starts talking in French. She says, then don't work with me. Without your father, your seat costs me money. He is your value to me. You forget how many girls there are just like you, which is probably true. But like Nicole said the same thing to Robert when she was talking about how without me, you are a cost to your firm. And Celeste is saying the same thing to Yaz, like basically without your dad, you are a cost. So both, it's funny how it's like both Robert and Yaz had these like super toxic people who without them, they no longer are valuable to Pierpoint. But again, it's at great personal cost. So,
and it's so funny. You said the word cost 5 times in that sentence. It's deeply encoded in these banks to the point that your desk is actually labeled a cost center. You will have a CC code when like things are expensed and whatever. Yeah. So everyone is being so adamant in reminding these people that like, you should be so lucky to be here. You are worthless. You are just one of the faceless masses. What makes you so special? Why is Robert special? Well, the only thing that makes him special is Nicole, and she's terrible and toxic. Why is Yasmin special? The only reason she's special is her dad. He's toxic, right? Ugh, it's terrible. I feel so bad for Yasmin. But of course, like, she's trying to say enough is enough. And I think this is another really good point where, like, life is so gray that sometimes you do bad things or you are part of things that are bad as you're ascending through an organization or as you're making your way. And at a certain point, you realize, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. My morals have changed. I've had a crisis of conscience or whatever. And if you want to get out, it's like these people in the mafia. You're too deeply intertwined. You can't just say, all of a sudden, I want to be completely clean and I'm out.
Yep, 100%. So Yaz walks out, grabs her jacket, she leaves, and she goes home, and she goes down to her basement, and she can't open the door. So then she goes upstairs, tries her key, again, can't open the door, rings the doorbell. Then she calls her dad, and he tells her that he changed the locks, and he froze the bank accounts, and tells her that if she wants to be on her own, she can. Although, again, like, the money that she had earned, to your point, is literally now frozen in his bank account. And
he's completely iced her out. And also, while this whole scene is going down, there's a song playing in the background. And it's like, I don't know where they found this song. I don't know if they wrote this song for this scene, but the lyrics go, money never wakes you up and says you're good enough. You'll see. Money doesn't care about you. Always going somewhere without you. Hey, money, come back. Money doesn't spend its life. Money only spends the night. You keep waking up a mess, but money's already dressed. Old surprise, the wolf puts on a new disguise, knowing in your sleep, no one's going to hear you scream. So this is all this like soaring music as Yasmin is having this total descent to her rock bottom. And then we finally see her show up at Robert's.
Yep. Well, but it's also, I want to add that her father also says on the phone, this is what you do to me, which is so blame the victim. So to your point, she shows up at Robert and then she asks for 20 pounds to pay the taxi. And she just like bursts into tears, gives him a hug. He basically is like comforting her. And then she obviously asks for money.
Like this whole descent, this whole fall from grace that Yaz has to this rock bottom moment where she's finally turning to Robert, kind of the one person who loved her, like for her, although I don't even know how he knew what her was because their interactions were so weird.
This is so true. All right, so now next scene, they're at a pub and Yaz is apologizing to Robert for basically using him. And so Robert asks if she's feeling better. She says like she doesn't know. Maybe she was rash, I guess, in like what she had said to her dad. I don't think so at all. Like I think this has been a long time coming.
Like she's totally reconsidering here. I think she's like, what have I just done? Like, this was all well and good when it was this big, noble thing, but I have no idea what it's like to be without money. I'm not cut out for this. What am I, like, what was I thinking? I think that's what she's going through. And then she's like, I need cocaine. Like,
And I don't know why she then needs Robert to get it for her, but she asked if Robert could help her out. And he says yes, that he's not going to partake because he's sober. But like, I didn't entirely understand why she needed him to go get cocaine for her.
Well, A, she doesn't have a car.
That's fair. This is true.
B, like, I mean, she
also doesn't have money.
but to your point, she is so used to using and abusing Robert that she doesn't even blink, right? She doesn't blink being like, oh my God, thank you so much for picking me up at my lows. Now, can you go do me this favor?
Yeah.
So as much as Yasmin's had this crisis of conscience, Yasmin hasn't changed.
No, 100%. Yep. Nope.
And by the way, she says, I'll be waiting in your room for you. There's this almost implicit trading of a sexual favor for the cocaine.
That's true.
Like she's stringing him along here, looking at him being
Although I also think that even if she had been back in her room, I don't know that he would have gone for it. Remember in the past, she showed up and she was kind of like, I will sleep with you basically. And he's like, I'm off of anything that is addictive and bad for me. So I don't know that he would have necessarily even done anything with her.
I don't know that he would have either, but I think she 100% would have played with that fire had she had the ability to.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, this next scene, like what the actual, I mean, I think it's actually important in the grand scheme of what you were talking about of like who is effing to and like then the whole conversation about DVD not getting married. But so next scene.
And mommy and daddy.
So next scene, Harper is sitting at the bar, I guess, where Rishi is having his rehearsal dinner or welcome drinks for his wedding. I don't know that she was even invited because he seems like he's surprised that she's there. So he walks in, he gets a drink and he sits down with her. And then Eric calls and Harper answers, hi, Dad, to disguise who she's talking to. Eric is confused, but he says, Adler went for it. We're a go. We can stay. Rishi and Danny are out. And Harper replies, tell mom not to worry. I'll call her soon. Eric, this, by the way, I think this was the turning point for Eric, but we're going to talk about that later. He seems very weirded out. And honestly, if I was him, probably worried that she's plotting against him. But that's my 2 cents. Anyway, so she's here. She now knows that Rishi is about to be fired because of what she has just done. And now Rishi tells her, Di is pregnant, like his wife, his fiance. He's about to get married to this woman and she's pregnant. To which Harper replies, you're really A-list at your job. Everything's going to work out for you. So I do think she's having like some twinges of not regret, but just empathy maybe? I don't know.
No, 100%. I mean, she has literally just stabbed him in the back. As far as she knows, the deal is now 100% sealed. I do agree with you. The camera pauses on Eric when he hangs up the phone with her and he's like, well, who is she in front of that she had to talk to me in code? What is Harper plotting that she can't talk to me? So I'm 100% with you. Also, why is Eric not at the rehearsal dinner, right? Because we don't see Eric until the next morning. So I'm totally reading with you. Like something sketchy is up with this phone call. I don't think it's a mistake that they're pretending to be mommy and daddy talking after Rishi had the conversation off camera earlier about literally walking in on his parents fucking, so it's like.
This show is so genius. Like they do such a good job.
So much layered into this. Who's fucking whom, right? So in Harper's mind, she has totally just fucked Rishi professionally. She's now hearing that the stakes of that are worse and more human than she had anticipated, just like the stakes of what went down with Jesse escalated so much more beyond what she was willing to do something wrong. She was willing to give him inside info. She didn't know it was going to go down like that. She was willing to stab Rishi in the back, but now he's going to be a dad. Like even Harper, you're like, she's like, this is just, oh man, like this kind of sucks. So she's like kind of like chugging her drink. Like she is drinking heavily. Yeah. And Rishi is being uncharacteristically vulnerable around her, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, because to his knowledge, he and Harper are both on the same team that are moving to New York and going to go work for Namora. Us as the viewer, we've completely forgotten that was even like part of the plan. 100%. But they are on such a different page having 2 totally different conversations. Rishi is contemplating like his own mortality effectively because now he is going to be a father. He is going to have quite literally a next generation to whom he is passing this down. He is entering into this major commitment of marriage and fatherhood.
Which he also was clearly like a commitment phobe. And
yes, exactly. And the major commitment of now uprooting his entire career and moving it to another city. So it's literal and metaphorical on all these different fronts.
Yeah. So his exact words, he says, an unnecessary but valued compliment. All right, I'm full on scared right now. And then he asks if she's coming. They go into the bathroom. They do some coke, as again, all of our characters do. And that's when he says, I always used to feel doubly happy at other people's weddings. Fucking happy for the couple, they're coupling, and happy for myself that I was never directly involved. Harper says, man, just think of it as a chapter in a novel. Not the entire novel, sweep it under the rug. Rishi says that's a wildly calculated thing to say to a man about to be married. Harper says, bucket, compartmentalize. That's the only way we can justify the bit of our lives we'd rather forget. Rishi replies, I mean, that's psychopath logic. You compartmentalize heinous shit. Anyway, this is what I should be doing. And then he kisses Harper and they have sex in the bathroom. By the way, right before he's about to go get married to his pregnant wife or pregnant fiance about to be wife.
Right. And they are having 2 very different conversations simultaneously in 100%. That meetup. 100%. Harper is talking about what she is doing, right? She is compartmentalizing what she is doing to Rishi that is something that's heinous. And Rishi is compartmentalizing all of the things that he thinks are not like aligned with his personality. Oh my gosh, I'm getting married. I'm going to be a dad. That's so foreign to me. So she's giving him advice that he's reading about, like, you're supposed to compartmentalize the fact that you're a father. Like, that should be like such an integral part of your being.
Yes.
Your marriage, your legacy, all of these things. So it's brilliant writing because they're not talking to each other. Well, Rishi's talking to Harper being like, are you serious? You're way darker than I thought in terms of your soul.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so then as they finish, Rishi says, sorry, just had to get the poison out, to which Harper says, me too. And this idea of poison is going to come back in like just a second with Yaz. But back to even the initial conversation with DVD when he was saying how he like didn't get married because he found out that his fiance was like sleeping with some people. And then anyway, it's just like this whole thing. It was such like a full circle writing.
Well, also, what's the poison? Harper is the poison, right?
Harper is the poison.
Harper is the common thread in all of these things.
100%.
For her, the poison that she had to get out, I think, was the guilt over fucking over Rishi. By actually fucking it, like what? That's how she unleashes her demons. And for Rishi, I actually think the poison that he's getting out is like him becoming a real person, him getting married, him having a kid, him making a real commitment. That's the poison, right? So it's just, it's a wild thing.
Yeah. So then in the next scene, now we see Robert getting screwed over because of Yasmin. So he has gotten pulled over by a cop. Why, we don't know. He's sober.
Well, it's a random DUI check, right? They have these on the streets all the time.
Oh, I didn't know that. So anyway, so he's sober. And then as the cop asks to see his license, the coke that he just got for Yasmin falls out. And Robert says, look, it's not enough for intent to supply, right? So he's not like dealing it. But then the cop says it's enough for him to lose his job over when he sees his Pure Point card. And so then he says, come on, you can cool off in the drunk tank. Or I guess the drunk tank is prison, but yes. Okay. Got it.
He's basically getting a slap on the wrist, but he is going to jail for the night.
Yeah. All right. So now in the next scene, we're with Jesse, Gus, and Leo, who are all together celebrating, right? Because
in this absurdly sized dining room in this absurd house.
Of course. And so Jesse says, a bloom at Oxford. Dozens of generations didn't make it. Now dozens of generations might. And Jesse asks if they want.
And by the way, Jesse's wearing a Lehman Brothers shirt.
Yes. Scene. Yeah. Jen, I knew you would love that. So Jesse then asks if they want another bottle. Leo says yes. So he goes to get some champagne. And as he leaves, Jesse looks at Gus and says, thank you. And Gus says he deserves it. He earned it in a way. And Gus then tells Jesse that he lost his job again. And Jesse asks, is that a demand? To which Gus then says, is that an offer? And then Leo walks back in with a bottle of champagne, pops the cork. Bloom then says to Gus, I'm sure we can find you something to celebrate. So
implying that, in fact, he is going to make him an offer.
Which we see in the next scene, because now Gus is on a private plane. And he says, when we land, we go straight to meet with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, which for our non-US listeners, very centrist, Democratic senators. I actually think both are no longer in the Senate anymore, but whatever. Back when this episode aired, they would have been. And Jesse says, I'm trying to twist their arm on a giant spending package because in the United States, you have obviously the president and then you have the Congress and then the House, and any spending packages, like you need a majority of the senators. And from 2020 to 2024, the Democrats only had 50 votes. But the point is that they couldn't lose even their moderate Democrats, and they tended to be much more conservative on the fiscal side. So that's why he's basically then trying to talk to them. So he says, I'm trying to twist their arm on a giant spending package. Anyway, in case you care. But
cool. No, I appreciate that color.
So Gus then says, Rachel Levine wants to talk Rican and the future of U.S. healthcare next week. Jesse says, tell her I'm no expert, I just own it. And then he adds, so look, now that you've officially joined me on the dark side, you can sit in these meets with me. You can be proud of yourself too. These are rooms you were born into, lest we forget it. Don't forget to tell them what schools you went to. Jesse then puts on an eye mask, lies back before adding, I'll be proud of you too. But what I thought was interesting is Gus then kind of like looks out the window and smiles. He's happy about this. Like he's happy. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's like 100%.
I love the way that they ended both Jesse and Gus's arc this season.
Yes.
I mean, Jesse, as far as he's concerned, has locked everything up both for his fund and for his progeny, both real and adopted.
Yeah.
I do think with Leo into Oxford, he's righting all the wrongs of like Jesse not having born into privilege. And Gus is back in the fold now and positioned in some weird way to kind of take over the family business until Leo's ready.
Yes,
like
100%.
And by the way, his other progeny is Harper, who it looks like is still going to be staying at Pure Point and covering him. So like all of his children are taken care of. He can now sleep in his Lehman Brothers t-shirt on his private plane. And for Gus, he says he wasn't cut out for politics. He was born to do this. You
But
know,
he was
even though it was like his path to like noble politics, he's not noble.
He got lost at some point along the way. If you go back to last season, it all kind of started with Hari dying and him feeling like the way that was handled was just not done well and becoming very disillusioned with everything. But he started with like blue hair, and not that blue hair means you're floundering, but like he just felt like he was lost. Like,
No,
was
he
he
was.
writing
And
a
he was like,
novel? What
are you
was he
writing a
doing?
novel? Like,
Yeah. Now it seems that he feels like he has found purpose again. He has found
But purpose through misdeeds.
Yes, but again, it's like his parents would be proud. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's like-
but like they were not proud when he was doing the work. Remember, his sister came to like rescue him when he was working with the impoverished and mentally unwell constituents.
But this
They
is
would
not
be proud, but like even when he was trying to do the right thing and like, oh, I'm getting Leo into Oxford, he didn't get Leo into Oxford until he basically went and like intervened and bribed one of the professors.
But again, this is not a story of people doing the right thing. This is a story
100%.
of power and money. He's back on top. Even if he's done it wrong, I do feel like he probably feels he has purpose back in his life.
Yes.
He is accomplishing things that he is setting out to do. Like, I do think he feels like if I'm trying to get something done, it is working. And he's back at a place where it's like he can call home to mom and dad and his sister, and they now have something that they can be proud of to say that he's doing. I'm not saying this is like good morally. It's just that like,
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
But whenever someone does the noble moral thing like Yasmin, it does not work out well for them in this show.
But that's like all, I feel like that's like so many shows these days where it's like always the anti-hero. You know what I mean?
I don't know that I'd call them anti-heroes. Gus is the closest thing we have to an anti-hero. Most other people on this show are pretty explicitly villains.
It's true. I mean, well, Harper is definitely a villain. But yeah, actually, speaking of which, to the next scene.
Okay, so we flash to Rishi's wedding. They are in a church, and Yasmin walks in late and comes to sit with Harper. They are singing the song after which this episode is named, which actually has like a deep and special meaning to me. But I also think this is the everything coming together moment, not just for the episode, but also for the season. The song is called Jerusalem, and it's also more typically called And Did Those Feet in Ancient Time, which is how I knew it growing up. And the reason I knew it, for those of you who know me, Kristen, you know this, is I'm not religious. I've been to shockingly few religious services, but I went to a high school called Milton Academy, which is in the US, relative to the UK, one of the most ancient, it's like 2.25 centuries old academic institutions. And the song comes from a poem that was written 6 years after my school's founding by the poet William Blake. It is the preface to the epic poem Milton, which is about the author John Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost back in the 17th century. Another epic poem.
And you said, is that who the school is named after?
No, you know what? I think it's named after the town of Milton, which
that would make more sense.
Yeah, which is likely in some way, shape, or form named after John Milton. But yeah,
so indirectly.
It's in Milton, Massachusetts. But anyways, I went to Milton Academy, and every single year they would have us sing this song. For most people, it's a hymn that they've probably sung in church a lot. But I'm actually going to read it. It's very short.
Can you sing it?
You are not going to make me sing on this podcast. I will let you sing it if you want. But the poem is, And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountain green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here among these dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. The part of the song that references Jerusalem, and was Jerusalem builded here among these dark satanic mills. That's the line that kind of like always sticks with me, and I think most people. So I think referencing everything that the writers have built thus far this season and kind of like throughout the whole arc of the show with these characters, everything that Pierpoint represents. For me, I can't help but going back to that idea of this shining city on a hill, this Jerusalem, this kind of like noble culture where everything is professional and everything is done by the most brilliant people working their hardest with like the best information that they have. That's how we kind of romanticize finance. It's like everyone's so smart and just like going after it. But here we've got the dark satanic mills. We've got the poison that Harper's talking about. We've got the toxic relationships, whether it's with Nicole, whether it's with Yasmin's dad, whether it's with Celeste. What's happening in this episode, right? There's this implication that we're wielding illegal knowledge for profit, all of these things.
Yeah.
And so in this context, we all of a sudden have the return to the friendship between Yasmin and Harper, which is my favorite thing about the whole show, right?
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this the whole season, and here it is. So within this context of like, Pierpoint's not Jerusalem. Pierpoint is not the institution that is kind of like our savior. I actually think it's Harper and Yasmin's relationship when it's good. That's what I'm kind of longing for to elevate us out of all of the toxicity.
Well, and their interaction was
amazing.
So yeah. So Yaz says, "You were right when you said nothing I had belongs to me." And Harper basically looks horrified. She's like, "Did I say that?" And Yaz replies, "Yes, but it was right after I said no one would ever love you." And Harper then laughs and says, "Dang, fuck, we were that real? Straight for the neck, bitch." And Yaz replies, "It's a fucking church," because this is all as, Rishi and Diana are getting married. Eric
Literally
looks back
as
at
they're
them.
singing that line, "And was Jerusalem builded here among these dark satanic mills?" The camera zooms in on Eric, who hears them saying, "It's a fucking church." And you're like, oh, Eric's here. He wasn't there last night. And he's looking at those two girls having this conversation.
Yeah. Harper then asks Yaz, "Do you think I'm poison?" And Yaz replies, "Do you think I am?" I loved this whole little interaction with them. They also, before this, they sort of were like, "Where was Robert? His phone died.
No, I
Maybe
think
he's
that was
drinking
very
again."
telling because when Yaz walks in, she confesses that she's been in the same outfit for 30 hours.
Yeah.
And she kind of flippantly is like, "Where's Robert? Like, he didn't come back the night before." She's so self-absorbed that in her noble quest of righting all these wrongs while she's trying to source cocaine, she didn't even stop to think that Robert might be in trouble. And Harper says, maybe he got sucked into a bender with the ushers. Poor Robert, who is sober. And Yasmin's like, yeah, okay, maybe,
and it's just like, whatever. I mean,
so for all of her nobility and trying to break away from her father, what I see from Yasmin here is she hasn't changed a bit. She actually is, to some extent, the worst of what Harper thought of her still in terms of her actions. They say a lot about her.
Yeah.
And again, I think to the question we asked earlier, there are no good guys. There are only... But
although Robert might be a good guy. I think he might be the only redeeming, sort of good. You know what I mean? He has...
Which is why nothing works out for him.
Which is why nothing, 100%. And so actually that's the next scene. So Robert's walking out of the police station and a car is there. So you know someone has come to get him. At first you don't know who it is. And then, shocker, it is Nicole. And so she goes, "I'm so touched you called." And he tells her that his phone died and basically he had her card.
Why would he have her card in his pocket, by the way? That's so absurd. I will say this. There were periods of time in 2012 where if you have a client on a turret, you're not going to memorize their number. But I have some clients who didn't have turrets for whatever reason, and I would still have to dial their number multiple times a day. And if I had gone to jail, the only cell phone numbers or phone numbers I would have had memorized were your home phone number in
from
Massachusetts from 1994, and a couple of my parents and my clients. That's all I would have been able to dial.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so she replies, "We all need someone." And so as they're driving, he's scarfing down a sandwich and she starts with him. She says, "You're very ugly when you eat." And Robert says, "There must be nothing more terrifying to you than going home." So Nicole asks, "What the fuck do you know about me?" And Robert says, "I know you. You're just like my mother. She was an unfillable void of need too." And Nicole says, "Well, that explains you." Robert then says, "I've been trying to understand how a predator like you, for every one of the people you use who recoils when you touch them, there might be someone like me who sees you and reciprocates, and just for a little bit, you get to live." Nicole then asks, "Predator, is that a person you know? God, you kids. I get a little pissed, a little handsy, and you act like the world's ending." Robert says, "But those other kids, they don't get to see your bedroom, do they? And let me tell you, from the privileged position of you letting me in is the loneliest fucking place I've ever seen. It's the loneliest fucking place I've ever been." To which Nicole says, "Then you felt so at home." Robert then just goes silent. And so she then pulls over, opens the door, tells him to get out of the car unless he's done being the victim. He closes the door. She then grabs him by the crotch and says, "Good boy. See, you want me to." And back to your point where, again, he's trying to do the right thing, similar to with Yaz. And it's like she has all the power over him. She's literally driving him home after he doesn't even have his phone. And it's just like, see? But
and he wants to get out of the car, get off the carousel, whatever you want to call it, metaphorically speaking, but he can't.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I don't know where we go with Robert's character from here in season 3.
He's in season 3.
This is how I felt. I've heard that he is not coming back for season 4. Someone spoiled that for me. So I don't want to know what happens to him in season 3. But I will say I felt so hopeless for Gus's character at the end of season 1. You promised me that he had a great arc in season 2, and I was not let down. I really hope that we have the same thing for Robert in season 3. So I will say no more about Robert as we leave him for now and get back
all I'll say is he doesn't get less tragic necessarily.
Oh God.
That was
I don't know if it's the next day that we cut to then, or if it's like a week later. Like, I don't know how much time has passed. I assumed Rishi was getting married.
I think it must be the next day though, because we see that in the next scene, Harper walks to Pierpoint and then Danny's trying to swipe in and it doesn't work. So he has just been fucked.
So as far as Harper knows, by the way, she doesn't look 1 ounce of like guilty, remorseful, anything. She just kind of sees this happen and is like, oh, well, I guess the whole plan's going down then.
Yep. The only thing that we do see is that Yaz is at a restaurant with Venetia and Yaz apologizes and asks if she's okay. And Venetia's like, you're the first person who's actually asked me that. But Venetia says yes, and that with the new CPS FX merger, she's probably not going to say a Pierpoint.
Now we know it's been announced, by the way. Like, we now have confirmation that this announcement has happened. We haven't seen, like...
Well, it's funny. It says the CPS FX merger. Like, it was supposed to be London, New York that was getting folded in, but you're saying because this is the implementation of the macro hedge fund sales and CPS and FX getting merged.
That's what they were turning it into. They were pivoting from the New York, London to now CPS and FX coming.
Got it. So then Venetia says, do you ever think you can feel yourself corrode in real time? And Yaz says that she thinks she's eyeing the exit too. And so Venetia says the money is fucking hard, like as the bill is coming. And we know that Yaz has no money. And Venetia can sense that Yaz is uncomfortable. So she offers to get the bill. And Yaz is like, don't get ridiculous. I'm your senior, or at least I was.
It's 221 pounds.
Which is a lot, by the way, for brunch. I mean, I guess maybe not.
Not in London.
Not in London, I guess. Yeah. Even for New York, for 2 people, I mean, again, if it's a boozy, because boozy brunches are usually like heavily it's like unlimited. I don't know. That seems a little high.
I don't think they're going to a bottomless mimosa kind of place. I think they're going very posh. And I think Yasmin has almost forgotten that she can't change her behavior, even though she has no access to money.
Yeah. So Venetia gets up and thanks her. And then Yaz is like, bitches who brunch.
Well, one of the key things is Yasmin says, no. Like, I'll get it. She says, I'm senior to you, or at least I was. So in my mind, she said she was thinking of making an exit, but Celeste has explicitly told her not to work for her anymore. So in my mind, she no longer works in FX. She might not any longer work in wealth management. Has she left Pierpoint? Like, I feel like it's very unclear at this point if Yasmin is still employed at Pierpoint.
Sure.
I want to make sure it wasn't just me that I didn't miss a plot point in my 2 watches.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously know what happens in the next season. So, like, I mean,
but they intentionally left it ambiguous as to what her future is with the firm.
I think like she has enough relationships. She can like probably pull some strings.
I'm sure she can. Yeah, I'm sure Yasmin is not getting written off the show. She's like on she's the center of the
main
billboard for season 3.
She is, I would argue, the main character of season 3.
Good. I'm glad. I think she's such an interesting and well-written character.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm simply just like actually not sure if she still has a job.
Yep. So then Venetia gets up. She's like watching her. And then as she sees that she's left, she's like, all right, I'm skipping out on the bill. And
she dines and dashes. I mean, talk about a fall from grace.
So anyway, now we're back at Pierpoint. And Harper walks on the trading floor and sees Rishi, who, by the way,
you hear Rishi first. You hear him off camera first.
True. So and she's sort of like, what the fuck? Anyway, so she says to Rishi, what are you doing here? To which he says, you tell me. So Harper, spidey senses are up. Something's not right.
Well, also, he gives her a look. And you're like, why is he giving her this look? Is it because they slept together the night before his wedding?
Fair.
Or is it, wait a minute, you were supposed to go to Namora. We were supposed to go together. Why are you surprised to see me here? right?
But the Nomura thing, they never got an offer. So nothing had happened yet from that. Like that was still like in negotiations,
True.
you
We
know?
always,
So
like,
really,
jump, like 10 steps
so
ahead.
really, like if you're Rishi, theoretically, he should not be surprised that she's back. Like she just like,
Well,
is like,
Harper should not be surprised to see him if you're Rishi.
right. But Harper is surprised because she knows that DVD couldn't get in the building. So Rishi theoretically shouldn't be able to get in the building.
Oh, 100%. We know why Harper's surprised.
Yeah.
But in Rishi's mind, why would he be like, you tell me? Why would he be like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, we're all like, aren't we the four amigos? So when he reacts that way,
you know,
that's what I'm
something's up.
saying. Like, that's what the,
Mm-hmm. So then anyway, Jackie and Kenny, who I'm like sad that we like didn't, or maybe did we? Have we had Jackie for most of the season? Maybe we have.
We had a big Jackie episode.
You're
she almost got like because we went on the road with Jackie to Berlin.
It's so funny. It's so long in the past. And I'm like, was that season
for
1?
Us.
For us. Oh, yeah. So she actually has. So anyway, so Jackie and Kenny walk back over because again, obviously they're merging together. And Kenny comments how much colder it is on that side of the floor.
Oh my God, the air conditioning vents on these, like, I know exactly what he's saying. That's verisimilitude right there.
But I also feel like there was something with that as well, because then Eric walks over. Kenny says, Commander Tao. Eric says, good to be down here. The air feels different. So you had 2 people then commenting on the air, which I think is more of symbolic of just like the fact that something's up. Nice. So Eric then says to Harper, hey, follow me for a sec. And Harper tells Eric that she saw DVD and his past was dead. And then she asks, what's the story with Rishi? Eric says, I found the head count. Harper says, fuck, I'm stunned how relieved I am at that. Because she knows that, again, he's like just got married, like has a pregnant wife. And then Eric touches his head and like you can see that he's something's up. But Harper asks if he's okay. And Eric's like, I'm just a little lightheaded, under the weather. It's been quite a few months. So they go up in the elevator together.
He says, I have been for a couple of months. Like, he says, like,
Ben
I have been feeling under the weather for a couple of months. You're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So then they go up in the elevator together and Harper says, it feels like a fever dream sometimes. You got to check that it's real, which by the way goes back to season 1. I think that was like her and Yaz walking together and she's like sort of still, you know, big-eyed, bushy-tailed, awestruck. So she says, you got to check that it's real. She blows in her hand. She says, yep, still alive. God, I was a zombie in that hotel room. Because back to, again, the very beginning of the season.
Well, Eric does it. And he goes, oops, time's up. You know, he's playing along with her little joke, but he has a very different reaction when 100%. Finding out if he's still real.
Yeah. But it is interesting that she says, God, I was a zombie in that hotel room. Because it's kind of, again, just flashing back to where she was at the beginning of the season, where she was hiding, like post, it was like during COVID. She didn't want to like go into the office, all this stuff. And he kind of rescued her. She says, I think I ran up quite the bill. Eric says, you did. Pierpoint won't cover it, but I got it. And Harper asks why. And Eric is like, we're past why. She then touches his arm and says, thank you. And he replies, I'm doing this for you. So, and I want to come back to that.
We have never seen physical contact like this before between them, right?
Yeah.
We have seen Harper be more intimate physically with Yasmin and Eric in this episode than like ever in their friendship. Like,
but again, in both ways, in very loving ways. I just want to make that very clear that this is not like some weird predatory sexual thing. It's like a comforting. Oh, I know you did. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear. So they walk out of the elevator. She looks confused.
And by the way, the whole time I'm watching this scene, I am texting Kristen, like, because I watched this twice. And the first time I was watching this, I'm texting Kristen. I'm like, what's happening? Oh my God. Yeah. I think I know where this is going. Oh my God. And like, as the elevator doors are opening, I'm like, Harper, don't get out of that elevator. What's waiting on the other side of that elevator? Like, it was like a horror movie, right? Yes. I was literally like, don't go into the dark room. Like,
So they go into the room with HR, and it's the guy from the first season who was chasing her about her transcript. Because if you remember, for her to have been hired, she needed to have her transcript from college. So Harper asks, what's going on? This can't be about Jesse. I didn't know he was going to do it, right? Because she thinks it's this like insider trading thing. And Eric says, Harp, why don't you have a seat? So the HR guy says, there's no easy way to say this. It's been brought to our attention that you never completed your undergraduate degree. Your transcript was a forgery. College graduation is a sine qua non for all our employees. Your duplicity in this matter contradicts a founding principle of the Purepoint business, honesty and integrity, which is like so funny just in light of like everything else.
Not lost on anyone during this.
He says, we've made a strong recommendation to your manager. There is only one course of action in this scenario. Harper then is just sort of, she's like looking at Eric in disbelief. She then looks at the guy, and then Eric says, I have to let you go. You are fired, Harper. And so then the song ends with, I don't know the song, maybe you do, but it's like, this is how the good Lord works. But I did think it's interesting going back that he says to Harper, I'm doing this for you. And so there's a couple of things here. So number one, when you had initially texted me, you were like, I can't believe they're bringing back this stupid transcript thing. Like they're firing her for this. So my take on this was, well, I think he stopped trusting her. I think when that phone call came in, when she said, hey, Dad, I think he
stopped trusting her long before that. I think he realized in that meeting with Adler when she threw Rishi and DVD under the bus.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
That was the beginning. That's what, because he's looking at her like, oh,
I don't know you.
You really are that ruthless. So there were a lot of things that I caught on the second watching that I didn't catch the first time around.
Yeah. I feel like he's starting to see that her ethics have become questionable, but so far past the point that like he has questionable ethics, but it's like she just keeps going beyond and beyond the line where he was like, the line should be big and red. It's like it goes back to the wrong way trade where she told him what happened. It's the transcript. She told him what happened and this insider trading stuff. And he's like, not so much that it was a test, but it like was a little bit where he's like, look, I can retire. You can go back to New York. And she decides to pick, what's behind sort of door number 2. She wants to go ahead with using Bloom and sweeping this under the rug. And then she, to your point, is like, punish them, get rid of them, cut them as they're all supposed to be together. He sees that there is absolutely almost like no loyalty in her. She has screwed him over and he constantly is basically loyal to her every time. I feel like he always kind of goes back. So I was surprised that he did this because again, he's always sort of like had this soft spot for her. But I do think she's got to a point where I think he felt like, I don't recognize you anymore. I don't trust you. What this business is doing to you is corrupting you. I am doing this for you. Like I am trying to get you to save yourself a little bit.
I think it's in line with the theme that we've got the whole episode of legacy and parents and children. Who says this to you? A parent says to you, I'm doing this for your own good. Like, eat your broccoli. It's for your own good. I know what's best for you.
Yeah.
When he says that Harper's playing a young person's game, he still believes that very firmly, that Harper is going to have a long career. I don't think that he thinks this is the last he's going to see of Harper. But just like Yasmin getting cut off by her dad. This is just like, the mom and dad fucking over Rishi storyline that we have. This is Eric fucking over Harper. He built her. She is his legacy. He has poured all of his mentorship and all of her knowledge. And she's like the Frankenstein's
That's
monster
what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Yes.
Yeah.
So I saw it less of like him fucking her because it suited him.
But
more
that's
of
how
like,
she feels.
That's how
she
100% that's how she feels.
Yeah.
I feel it more that he's basically like, what is this monster I have created? I need to somehow save it. It's like AI. It's like you've made the robots and you need to turn it off.
But I don't think he's trying to like save her soul. I think that
not save her soul, but protect.
Just in the same way that everybody who's turned on everyone else is expected to like kind of respect that. I think to him, this is yet another move in the chess game. I think it hurts him more than all the other moves in the chess game. But I think it's, all right, your time is up. I have like taught you how to play this game. I am now stabbing you. You are my monster. And I know you will be okay because of this. But like where you are right now, I think she does pose a risk to him as he's seizing power now back within Peer Point.
Well, I think because he can't trust her. I do think that's part of it. I think that honestly, had he not called and she answered, hi, Dad, I don't know that he would have ousted her. He was starting to get the sense of who this person was. Mm-hmm. And, we talked about this because you were like, I can't believe it was her transcripts. But I think that it was like the easiest and honestly, like she can recover from that. The insider trading thing, I mean, the stakes are higher and it's not just a year fired. It is like a much bigger deal. Yeah. So this was sort of the low hanging fruit. Like it was enough to get her fired, but it's not enough to get her in trouble. So he was able to.
It goes back to the thing that it's the pettiest thing. I found it so unsatisfying on the first watch because I thought it was a stupid plot point in the first season.
100%.
And I was like, this stupid thing is coming back to haunt us. The dumb forged transcript because she went to a Chinese food restaurant when she was supposed to be taking a test because her brother was like missing his tennis match or whatever. Like I hated the whole plot line. So I was like, this old thing when you had an insider trading scandal that you've been building up the whole thing. But upon the second watch, what I appreciated so much about it was the insider trading scandal was necessary to shift the power dynamic back to Eric so that he could make this move ultimately because
Yeah.
he has something over Harper. Yes, he had this super petty thing, but she was never worried about him using that against her. And that's where Eric's brilliance is, right? By using something so petty, to your point, her career can continue.
And I did think it was funny, by the way. I think when he called her and she made that comment like, hi, Dad, I think he was looking at a picture of his two girls, by the way. But
entirely possible.
I do feel more than anyone, he does have this paternal feeling towards her, like, I'm doing this to protect you. I actually do believe that a little bit. More than anyone else who fucked over anybody else. Everybody else, it was purely selfish. I do think a little bit he's trying to save her from herself. Like he's seeing what she is turning into. And I think that probably scared him. I mean, again, I loved their dynamic and I'm so sad that it's getting blown up, although it's been blown up many times. I just read this in a slightly less cynical way, whereas every other chess move was purely like, I am stabbing you in the back purely for my own benefit.
No, I think he didn't trust her. Give you that reading. I'm not debating that reading. That there is. That's why he has a headache. That's why he's so fraught with emotion about this. They are showing you the physical consequences on Eric of grappling with what he knows this decision is going to mean for Harper, how she's going to react, and how hard it is for him.
I still think he's doing it a little bit to try to protect her. I really do.
I think protect is not the meaning I read. I think forge is maybe the meaning I read into it.
But like to basically try to get her to be a little bit less ruthless.
I think he, at the end of the day, created her to be this ruthless. And again, that's why he needs, I think, the distance from her. Because if he doesn't want to retire, he realizes, and I think anyone with a brain would realize, you cannot hitch your wagon to her star directly because she's just going to turn around and unhitch you. Like at the second it serves her. And we know that she would do that to him in the past. And so that's why I think he has to do it to her here, because I think it's the only way, quite frankly, that he stands to be safe at all, even temporarily. It would be naive to think Harper would reform and be like, you know what, I should like back it down. Thanks, Eric. You're right. You did teach me that I need to be a better person. She's gonna just, go and rearm.
But that's why, like, to stab her, I mean, he didn't kill her. So it's like,
I think he doesn't kill her because he can't, because he loves her. But he is stabbing her and leaving her wounded. Yes, it's the bad guy that you should probably finish off, but like you just can't because you love him.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. All right, so with bullish and bearish, who are you bullish and who are you bearish on into season 3? I obviously know what happens, but I'm curious what your take is.
I'm super bearish on Robert.
I know. Poor Robert. Yeah.
And I'm bullish on Gus. I love the reemergence. I love Gus as the phoenix who has risen from the ashes of what the hell was this political career? Like once I realized where they were going with it, I was very excited. So I'm excited to see him as Jesse's right-hand man. I hope they keep Jesse on as a character in season 3. And I hope that, you're breaking my heart. Well, even if this was just a 1-season arc for Jesse, I loved him and I thought he was a wonderful character. And I love Gus being back in the mix.
Yeah.
Even if that's maybe not his permanent role, then this is disappointing.
Well, no, can I tell you who is back in season 3 and who is not, since it's not really that big of a mystery?
Sure. Well, I assume
Gus
the
and
entire
Jesse
main
aren't back.
cast is back. Jesse's not back.
Gus isn't back either.
Gus isn't back?
No.
Oh Gus
is not in season 3. I know. That's why I was giving you faces, because I was like, Gus isn't back.
I thought you just meant he wasn't going to be working for Jesse.
No, he's just not back. He's just not in season 3.
I'm the one person I was bullish on.
But no, you can still be bullish on them, because again, I think that
Gus is going to go off and have a wonderful career running Jesse's hedge fund, unless they get nabbed for insider trading.
And then at this point, watching this, you're like, where does Harper go from here?
Oh no, I'm excited for Harper to have like a big vengeance arc. I hope, at least. I hope we're setting up for a war between her and Eric next season. I would love to see that.
I mean, yeah. But like, as we leave her, it's hard to be bullish on her because she doesn't have a visa. So how is she even staying in the UK? Then again, bearish, like, I'm sorry, there's just nobody sadder than poor Robert.
Yes. Am I wrong for wanting him and Yasmin to figure it out and just realize they love each other?
No, you're not wrong. You may get some happiness into season 3. Not that there's, I'm not going to spoil anything happy
in this show, but like,
no,
there may be
there's kernels.
No one's ever satisfied.
Seriously.
I mean, I had so much fun with this episode. This was just extraordinarily well written, so complex, so many layers. It took me 2 watches to catch as much as I did. And I think with 3 or 4 watches, you probably would have uncovered like 25 other alternate interpretations and meanings. So I'm so grateful to the writers for putting so much effort and nuance and complexity into this. I really do think they poured their heart and soul into this season finale. This is our favorite thing of everything we do.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So if you guys have been enjoying this, please leave us a written 5-star review. It really helps us grow in the ratings. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.